across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. 3 minutes past 10 is the time, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, watching on YouTube, all the other ways of watching and listening, always fabulous to have your company. I'm with you all the way until 1 o'clock. If you do miss anything from the show, and why would you, go to my YouTube page, Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe, you never have to miss a thing. Coming this out, if you know we're going to be discussing it, Professor Jason Ardé quitting his post at Cambridge, where he was appointed a few years ago as the youngest black professor ever appointed at the prestigious world-class university. This is after finding himself at the centre of both a plagiarism row and lies about his personal achievements. Well, don't know whether they're lies or not. They're just kind of unverified and unverifiable. And if about 20 minutes or 30 minutes time, we're going to be talking to another professor, also a black academic, who claims this is just, well, it's basically racism against a prominent young black professor. We'll talk about that. Plus, Tory leader Kehinde Andrews says she will never form a coalition with Reform UK, who she described as woke, so she couldn't trust Jenrick and Suella Braverman. Plus, the former neo-Nazi Joshua Bonehill-Payne has withdrawn as a Conservative council candidate. This happened last night following a backlash over his selection, but he will still act as an advisor to the Conservative Party. That has also been criticised by, well, among others, Luciana Berger, the former Labour MP, victim of his criminal harassment of her. Plus, the Met Police Chief, Sir Mark Rowley, has branded the system holding police to account as broken after it took 4 years to clear the officer who shot dead violent gangster Chris Kaba of misconduct. He was, of course, cleared of a murder charge by a jury of his peers, but then the police complaints, the IPC continued an investigation for years. I'm so pleased that man has been found to have committed no wrong whatsoever, and I would personally like to thank him for his good deed in getting a very dangerous man off our streets. Lots to talk about. I want to hear from you on, as always, any and everything we're talking about, but in particular, what does the Professor Jason Ardé scandal, and it is a scandal, whichever way you're looking at it. I mean, you're either looking at it as like, this is an outrageous attack on a young black academic who's done nothing wrong, or this is an appointment of a man with no one checking any of his credentials, who has told Porky after Porky after Porky is a Walter Mitty character. Now, you can take either side, but either way, his departure surely is now a scandal. Tell us, what does it tell us about the state of British universities, in particular, the urge to sort of have an appointment based on, what appears to be, diversity, equity and inclusion grounds, as opposed to their academic ability? Was he given more chances than say, a white academic who, if facing the same questions, would have been, well, out on his ear or her ear rather quicker? Or, actually, was he just attacked because of the colour of his skin? That's what some are claiming. Well, I want to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost £1. Standard network rate message. I'm delighted to say, as always, on a Thursday, we're joined by Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
First of all, do you really have an MBE? And were you a senior military intelligence officer? Can you verify both of those claims, sir?
Yes, I can, quite easily.
Now, this is the thing, isn't it? You see? Because when you apply for jobs, or when you put things on your CV, or go in the public eye and on your, the website of your workplace, and if you are in the public eye, it is best that you can verify that you
exactly
are actually who you say you are and can do the things. The list of things that Jason Ardé has claimed, personally himself, allowed to be written about himself, said in interviews, in speeches, put out himself, spoken about a number of occasions, documentaries and others, that is at the very best, with the best will in the world, unverified and unverifiable, leads us to all sorts of questions. But it does appear that his resignation yesterday came within hours of University of Cambridge basically saying that they were investigating him, following new information regarding, they say, his academic qualifications and honorary appointments, but also just after the Telegraph revealed that he had falsely claimed to have published a book, and that would have been one of the things you say, I'm a published academic author, a book that he was commissioned, never written, as far as we're aware, and certainly never published. Now, I've never published a book, but I don't claim to have published a book. Best thing to. But the claims of this man, he was Professor of Sociology of Education, whatever the hell that is, at Jesus College, Cambridge, one of the most prestigious colleges, one of the most prestigious universities, not just in Britain, in the world. He was hailed a few years ago when he was appointed as the youngest black professor. This was a wonderful, wonderful story of a man who'd come, from rags to riches, from great disability to a role, an incredibly senior role at a great, prestigious institution. And he's been exposed as, at best, a Walter Mitty character, and at worst, and again, there have been investigations, but we believe there are more, a plagiarist and someone completely and utterly who's just basically a fraud. Now, I'm not making the allegations, that's what some of the allegations have been. But, and he has denied that there's been any wrongdoing on his part. Philip, what do you make of this story, and what does it tell us about the state of British universities?
Well, it tells us that universities aren't carrying out the basic checks. If they're not doing it on the academic prowess of people that are appointed to professorship, what are they doing for other people that are working in more sensitive areas and everything else?
It's security and defence.
Well, it's security, but people who may be working on medical projects, people who may be working on defence-related projects, people who may be working on other sensitive, groundbreaking engineering projects, and how that could be exploited. There are so many questions come out of this that the Cambridge University really needs to answer, because on the surface of it, it seems like if any of this is true, they've been ticking a DEI box for the sake of doing it. It's not uncommon, though. That's the trouble.
This is it. We only yesterday had someone convicted who'd actually claimed to have been a doctor. People who were working, who literally had no qualifications.
I know someone who came into an industry that I've done a lot of work with, who claimed that she was a professor and showed an email to say that she was a professor. It had come from an African university. And the African university, they tend to call anyone that gives any lectures, even if it's on online, professor. And she used that to
it doesn't mean professor the same way we think of it as a very prestigious academic role.
But she changed her appointment to professor and goes around and does that, and has used that as a title to get into a number of different academic institutes across the UK, in London, and get fellowships in those institutes because of her appointment.
And there's a very big difference between people perhaps exaggerating what their role entailed, how long you work somewhere. You might have worked somewhere for a day in 2015, and you say, I was doing this in 2015. You just don't give the date, don't give the exact date. You've not lied.
You can be Chancellor then.
You could have been Chancellor, But I mean, I remember, I did my journalism course. I never actually passed my 100 words per minute shorthand. I have, on a couple of occasions, achieved on time 100 words per minute shorthand. Excellent. I don't claim in my CV when I was...
That you could do shorthand.
I did. I do shorthand. I use shorthand actually when I'm taking notes for my guests. But I don't claim to have the qualification. There is an actual qualification, 100 word per minute T-line shorthand. And I find it extraordinary that people are so brazen. I mean, if you've not been following this, and why haven't you? Because this story is... I think the story is hilarious and also deeply serious, because it has involved the police. Yeah. It has involved the police as well. But just... I'm going to run through them as quickly as I can. He claimed he had autism. He was diagnosed at a young age with dyslexia and autism. He was mute to the age of 11, illiterate to the age of 18, and amazingly managed to get this amazing, very, very quick academic education. He had a PhD. He had a Viva, which is the oral exam for your PhD. 3 weeks after having had surgery for a brain tumour, extraordinarily. Numerous honorary academic positions. Turns out 3 of those at UK and US universities, they've said, never heard of this guy, no role with us at all. Accused of plagiarism in his 2015 PhD thesis, which he wrote at Liverpool John Moores University. It was investigated. It was not upheld as misconduct. That he'd copied someone else's thesis in large parts. Said it was an honest and reasonable error. But later findings about his work have not been investigated since by Cambridge, which is what a lot of people say. He claimed to have written a book, then published a book. That simply wasn't true. The book was never published, never submitted. He claimed that he was in the 7 Up BBC series. That was 20 years before he was born. He later claimed he was using he mentioned the series 7 Up. He said he'd used that informally as shorthand illustration of the concept. I don't know what the concept is, but there we are.
You're either been on a programme or not.
He claimed that he was a victim of racist intimidation, both a pig's head sent to his parents' home, claims of a masked man one time with a knife outside his faculty threatening him. Police investigated all 3 incidents. No evidence of any of this at all, despite the fact large amounts of CCTV at the faculty. He claimed that he'd been taken by a friend from school to a homeless shelter, and that was what had got him into wanting to do good works. Later he said it was a former professor rather than a friend from school. I mean, I don't know. I mean, both times it was him telling the story in his own words. I don't think I'd forget something as life-changing as that. He claimed he'd run 30 marathons in 35 days back in 2010, and he ran the last 9 with a leg fracture. This would put him in the elite athlete category. He claimed he'd run 600 miles in 6 days, later claiming it was 12 days on a treadmill. Again, elite athlete territory. He claimed he'd raised £5.5 million for charities. There's no records of more than just a few £1,000s being raised. There's no witnesses, no photos, no online posts about these amazing achievements, which you normally get charitable donations for because you publicise them. They're all over the media. Who wouldn't want to publicise that, you know?
Exactly.
Later he's claimed since that it was a syndicate of 100 people who raised that money together, and they all signed non-disclosure agreements, so it can't be made public. Because the way people do. I mean, we've just got story after story after story. Now, he's been on the BBC. He was a guest editor of the Today programme. His memoir is still going to be published this month by a major publishing house.
Oh, then he will have published his book then?
Then he will have well, not the book he claimed to have published. Now, he was hailed as this brilliant story. But, you know, when people started investigating, an academic, Dr. David Harris, he faced, you know, police were asked to investigate him, chose not to. There were also legal threats to Jack Grove, a journalist at the Times Higher Education supplement, and police got in touch with him, accused him of harassment. The implication also in a legal letter sent to him was that there had been a racial motivation behind this. He'd only sent 4 emails with perfectly reasonable questions about his academic past. We've had this letter from the Good Law Project, organised by Jolyon Morhan, I mean, always on the wrong side of history, which basically claims they will... And there's 15,000 plus people have signed this. The great and the good, academics, MPs, really senior figures, claiming that these are fake accusations of plagiarism, we need to stand up to hate and division, and this is a sustained and malicious attack on the academic integrity of Jason Arday, and they make it really, really clear that this is about racism. This is about the colour of his skin. And when a distinguished black academic is repeatedly subjected to baseless allegations after being fully exonerated, it signals there is an attempt to undermine black people who hold positions of influence. That's what they say. What do you say to that?
It reminds me of Rolex. There's a number of things that come out of there. The claim about being on 7-Up. He's then changed the statement to do with that. Every time he gets called out in something, he changes it to a way that he's putting into context with something else, or people have been confused and everything else. That is
We've just misinterpreted it.
That is a clear Rachel Reeves approach to bringing your CV out. It's very clear that when he gets called out, he tries to justify it in some other way. When that doesn't work, then the racism card comes out. The individual I was talking about, the professor, every time she got called out by someone or questioned by someone, automatically it was sexism and it was ageism, because she was an older lady, but she'd drill into and say an attack, and then get 1 or 2 supporters that she had to act as attack dogs going in. It is a standard tactic. I have seen it on so many occasions.
And it's so undermining, and I'm sorry, but who actually undermines is actually other academics of ethnic minorities who are distinguished and proven and deserve their roles. This guy was appointed, as far as I can tell, simply because he ticked some boxes, and it was a great story. And Cambridge University is thought of as too, male, pale and stale.
100%. That would be my immediate assessment.
I mean, the only problem with him is that he wasn't a black lesbian.
Well, do you know that?
He might be. He might have claimed to be. No, but I'm saying then he would have ticked all the boxes. He had disability. He was working class. He rags to riches. He was an ethnic minority. But that's I, as a woman, I've never wanted to get a job because I'm a woman. And I would never want anyone to think that was the case.
Does it pass the smell test? No.
No, it doesn't. Well, he's claimed in his letter that he just simply it's unbearable to endure.
I saw, and it may be completely inaccurate and all the rest of it, but it made me smile today. Someone posted, because you can get AI checkers and see if text has been put through it, took his letter and put it through the AI checker, and it said 100% generated by AI.
Yeah,
no, I think that was probably false and probably a spoof, but it made me smile.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, another big story that's been around this week is this former neo-Nazi, Joshua Bonehead, I think we can safely say. He's withdrawn as a Tory council candidate in Somerset after being basically defended by Kemi Badenoch. She says she's going to use him as an advisor on their work to sort of tackle anti-Semitism. This after, outrage from not just representatives of Jewish communities in this country, but also the now Baroness but former MP Luciana Berger, who's Jewish MP, he was convicted and sent to prison for the most outrageous, misogynistic, anti-Semitic, horrific and pornographic harassment of her. He's a nasty little piece of work. He's got a number of other convictions. He's claimed to be a reformed character. He's now working, doing anti-extremism work via the Home Office and the like. But was Kemi Badenoch ever right to defend his Sir Jackson as a candidate?
Well, local council candidate, she had nothing to do with it. She went out to bat for him. She made a call on a number of points of principle. Your points of principle being, rehabilitation, change, can get the message. I've got a very, very good personal friend who's a former member of Al Qaeda.
Yeah.
I would quite happily, interview him on air. I will introduce him to people. He's spoken in Parliament. He's done lots of other things.
Now he has the zealot of a convert back to non-being.
He was in Al Qaeda. He was active in that organisation before he then got recruited by British intelligence and was run as an agent by British intelligence and has saved so many more lives. But do we now then vindicate him for life because he was a terrorist at different stages? And you have to draw a line somewhere. And the trouble is, there's an awful lot of people who are coming out with their opinions because it's really easy on the surface to put a soundbite on there and say, this is terrible. Well, they're not doing it because they disagree with that necessarily. They're doing it because they can bash Kemi Badenoch.
Well, no, exactly. My view, we were talking on there yesterday, was actually, we invited him for an interview. Sadly, I haven't got an interview with him. I want to meet him. I want to keep the cut of his jib. And I think it's much easier to make a judgment in person whether somebody is genuine or not.
I've put a lot of conferences together, and on those conferences I've had victims of terror sit beside terrorists and former terrorists, and one of the most moving ones was two ladies together. One lady, her sister had been murdered by the IRA. The other lady, her uncle was the head of the IRA that had murdered her sister, and she said her opening statement was, my uncle was heading the team that murdered her sister.
Yeah, but to be fair, it was her uncle, not her.
Yes, exactly.
Which I do think is different.
But she had been an activist in the whole organisation.
I've always said massive credit to the late Queen, willing to shake the hands of the people who would have, let's face it, ordered the murder of her relatives.
So I'm conflicted over it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that one as well. 0344 499 1000. Quite a few calls on that yesterday. Let's also talk about FIFA. Gianni Infantino convened this meeting of the management board of FIFA for some reason in Morocco. I know you always. He's Northern Ireland and he's a rugby man. Behave, Philip. I got you to watch a couple of matches during the World Cup. I was very excited. But he's apologised for errors he made in his controversial plans to sell off stakes in the competition to private investors for billions. But he's been backed by the management board. But those who were in Morocco to remain as FIFA president. But he does still need to get through an election next year. Very clear. We've got the Canadian Prime Minister is now saying that he's not backing. He's not got faith in him. We've had UEFA, we've had England, we've had Wales, so they're not going to support him. I think King of Jordan and others. Realistically, do you think he stays on? And does it matter? I
don't care. No, realistically, I don't think he stays on. But again, here's where there's hypocrisy across the board. Every single person that's on a football field in the World Cup, kicking a pig's bladder around the place, have put themselves out to be marketed by industry, and they're doing nothing but making money from it. Whether it's direct payment for
people making money from their job,
playing a game, or it's all the sponsorship. But then the organisation that's putting it together, why are we criticising them for coming up with different ways of making money for what they're doing for that organisation?
Well,
if they're going to plough it back into
the point was the FIFA is basically owned by all of the national sporting bodies, and he didn't really have a right to sell this off, and he didn't have agreement from the other management.
Exactly, but it's it's the whole game's corrupt. I'm sorry.
I mean, it is. I mean, well, certainly at international level, no doubt at all about that. Let's also talk about this decision, and this is absolutely the right decision. The Independent Office for Police Conduct, IOPC, they announced yesterday that the Metropolitan Police Officer who shot dead the gangster, let's call him what he was, Chris Kaba. You know, we see that picture, we probably got it, haven't we? That lovely smiling picture of Chris Kaba. Butter wouldn't melt. Oh, he had a baby on the way. What a lovely guy. He had a rap sheet as long as his arm, including, by the way, for beating up his pregnant girlfriend. He'd been named in a shooting of a rival in a nightclub a couple of weeks earlier. And that picture, doesn't he look lovely? If you're watching on YouTube, doesn't he what a lovely, nice, smiling guy. But he's a core member of a violent South London gang. He had convictions for knife violence, gun violence, burglary, you name it, OK? But he was shot dead, basically, as he tried to ram his way out of a hard police stop. He was shot dead by Sergeant Martin Blake in Streatham, South London in 2022. Now, back in 2024, I mean, it was outrageous. Martin Blake was both not only sent for trial, but was named publicly, which I think he should never have been, because it put him and his family at risk. He was cleared of murder because of a jury who, 12 peers true. They found him not guilty. But they continued extraordinarily to continue this possibility of a misconduct case against him. The IEPC has finally said that they're not going to. The Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Mark Rowley, said that decision brought to an end almost 4 years of uncertainty and called the process for making police officers accountable disgraceful. And he is quite right. And we really must be clear. Chris Kaba was a nasty little piece of work. The world is a better and safer place without him. I'm sorry that his mum and other people mourn him. I'm sure you do, and I'm sure he loved you dearly. He was a danger to other people and rivals and members of the public. He'd been named in a shooting in a nightclub, a shotgun being fired in a nightclub. It's a miracle. It's a miracle innocent bystanders weren't killed. I would like to not only see Sergeant Martin Blake back in his work and doing a great job keeping us safe, I'd like to shake his hand and buy him a pint for keeping us safe in London. Oh,
I do the same. Sergeant Martin Blake has been punished in the most despicable way for the last 4 years for doing his job. And then he's been punished by the process that his employer has insisted that he goes through. He needs to get a very, very, very big compensation check because going through that process and all the rest of it will have traumatised him, traumatised his family. You can't, that will live with him for the rest of his life. He needs to be looked after for the rest of his life, where he's not expected to go back to work because of the trauma his employer's done.
And again, the idea when people talk about, trigger-happy police, they talk about what goes on in America. No. I mean, even most of the stats that people have from America are incorrect, by the way. But we are talking about thousands and thousands of instances where armed police are called to an incident in this country, and we look genuinely with deaths. Sometimes there are none. Sometimes there might be 5 or 6, usually around 2 or 3. That's how trigger-happy our police are. They are so un-trigger-happy, it is extraordinary how few of these very dangerous men, by the way, are actually shot dead. It's extraordinary. And again, I want to shake his hand and thank him. Anyone listening, works in the police, if you know Sergeant Martin Blake, say, can we meet privately, nothing public? I want to buy you a pint and thank you for doing your job, looking after us. I really, really do. Let's also talk about his early release from prison, because now we know grooming gang members will be among those who are eligible to be freed from prison early. We're told, people convicted of paedophiles, rape and things won't. But again, there all seem to be all these different cases that keep coming through the system. I mean, Andy Burnham's popped off on holiday, but apparently, people convicted of manslaughter will be released, but not rapists. It's going to be delayed until October instead of September. That doesn't make a blind bit of difference to anyone, does it? It
doesn't make a difference at all, and I've been following this very closely. A very good friend of mine and a friend of the show, Ian Aitchison, has been commenting on it and turning around saying, with the prison places, a lot of the prisons that were closed down are in mothballs. They could be reopened again. There's no problems doing anything there. The politicians that are coming out and saying if they didn't release them, the whole criminal justice system would collapse are lying, and he's used words as strong as that in dealing with it. This is a farce, and this is a farce of Andy Burnham's making as it comes in.
It's a policy that's got long in its making, but the idea that there's nothing he can do, it's just, well, you know...
That's the farcical bit.
That's a lie.
He just needs to grip it and stop it, because
Absolutely.
there are plenty of places in our prisons at the moment.
Absolutely.
And then sort out something for whenever those places are going to go down.
Absolutely. And also, why does everything take 10 years to do, building prisons? I mean, for goodness sake. Building prisons is not an expense, it's a saving. Yes. It really, really is. 10:26 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. I want to hear from you. Give us a call on any of the topics you want to talk about, whether it's Chris Kaba, whether it's those early release, and we've been talking about that a lot this week, whether it's that neo-Nazi standing down, but I particularly want to hear from you about Jason Arday. Because what does that scandal? He stood down from Cambridge University, but what does it tell you about the state of British universities, that someone who basically was a Walter Mitty character, I mean, I'm sorry, so many of the things he said just simply are not verifiably true. How on earth did he get the appointment? How on earth was he not investigated sooner? Why were there no checks? And how many other people are working in British universities who really don't have the credentials to be there, teaching our kids at universities? They're paying, you know, a fortune, getting to 50 grand's worth of debt, being taught by people who, frankly, have no right to be there. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Do Reform, however, have a plan to build more prisons?
Yeah, 100%. So we will have overseas prisons. We will deport all foreign prisoners to their point of origin. You know, like Labour has done with some, by the way. Do you remember one of them one of an illegal migrant from Ethiopia, they sent him back straight away. Yeah. You know, there was no returns agreement, or they had no problem with that.
Why can't that just happen?
Why can't that just happen now? So that's one thing we do. So we should free up about 12,000 spaces just doing that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home and Common Sense, to me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Lots of responses on the Jason Arday case. Brenna's message says students are getting loans for nonsense standards of education. Neil says a complete joke, a very, very dangerous joke at that. Peter says having credentials is a joke now, it's a worthless piece of paper. Martin says universities are prioritising optics over substance until the curtain is pulled back. Tricia says DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, it harms everyone, including women and people from minorities. I feel sorry for the guy, along with anyone else who's benefited from this silly system who's not up to the job. And Hannah says it shows how captured our institutions are by wokeness. Let's go to the phone lines. Paul's on the line in Southampton. Paul, you want to talk about the Chris Kaba case and the police officer who's no longer going to face misconduct charges, aren't you?
Yeah, I just think it's absolutely disgraceful that it took them 4 years to come to... I mean, the bloke was on full pay, so you're talking that's £250,000 for his wages to sit at home and do nothing. And because I used to know a copper many years ago, he got suspended for something stupid for a year on full pay, and he wasn't allowed to go.
It's a mad use of resources. But also, what takes 4 years? I mean, the court case finished in 24.
Yeah, and they exonerated him. So why is this the IOPC or whatever they are. How come, if these are experienced police officers, it's a sterile scene, there's only coppers about, there's no bringing in specialists from anywhere, it's all on the film. What do they need?
Yeah, exactly.
What were they trying to prove other than that bloke was guilty? And they were just, to me, it looks like they were just running around trying to find something.
Yeah, it's just extraordinary. And again, I don't know why any officer would agree to carry a gun. Now, when every time you use it, and the very few occasions they do, you're going to face that. Of course, there should be an investigation. Of course, there should be. Well, no one's saying that, but it was very, very, very clear those circumstances. He was absolutely moving to save lives and did the right thing. Paul, thank you for that. We're going to take a quick break again, very, very quickly, because I do want to get straight to my next guest. He's academic Kehinde Andrews. He thinks that actually the Jason Arde case, well, you know, basically it's all down to racism. We'll talk about that with him next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:33 is the time. Let's talk more about Jason Arde now. He was, of course, a professor at Cambridge University at Jesus College. He was Professor of Sociology of Education. He resigned yesterday, saying that basically all of the non-stop investigations into pretty much everything he's ever claimed about his life was getting too much. He says thousands celebrated not simply my appointment a few years ago, but what it represented, that talent, perseverance and hope can triumph even over the greatest adversity. He said, but following the unrelenting level of public scrutiny and personal attack, he says, while criticism is an inevitable part of academic life, what I have experienced has gone far beyond scholarly disagreement. The relentless accusations, speculation and public commentary have taken a profound toll on me and on those I love. And he has said, for the well-being of myself and my family, he has decided that he is resigning from that job. This came straight after, well, within hours, Cambridge University announcing they were looking into some of his qualifications and claims of honorary professorships, and Times revelation that claimed that he had written and published a book was simply not true. So, what's behind all this? Is it just a revelation of, well, the emperor has no clothes? Is it all totally justified? Or is there something more sinister behind this? Well, let's talk about this with Professor Kehinde Andrews. He's an academic. He's also author of the book Back to Black, Retelling Black Radicalism for the 21st Century. Good morning to you, Kehinde.
Morning.
Do you think it's the right thing for Jason Arde to have resigned?
No, I don't, actually. I think it's really a shame that this is... We've heard about this for the last couple of weeks, but this has been a 3-year campaign since he's been at Cambridge to really, people have been just trying to find things, throwing things at him. It's been I know him a little bit and spoke to him about a year ago about his plagiarism accusations. And actually, you know, he sent me his PhD and I had a look. And it's not plagiarism. It actually, this is the fundamental thing that underlies all of this. The main allegation, does he have the credential? It's not plagiarism. It was investigated by his university. So
yeah, this was an accusation that a lot of his 2015 PhD thesis at Liverpool John Moores University had been plagiarised. Repeated claims about that. Now that university did investigate and they didn't uphold. You're quite right. He'd committed misconduct, academic misconduct. They said they were honest and reasonable errors. But it has been claimed by other academics at Cambridge that actually there are later findings, there are more claims there. But it doesn't just relate to plagiarism, does it? This relates to things like claims of having honorary academic positions at 3 universities, 2 in Britain, 1 in America, all 3 institutions having said, never heard of him, he doesn't. Now, why would someone say that they had... I mean, I'm pretty sure I don't have an honorary professorship or honorary role at this or that university, therefore I've never claimed it. Why would someone, I don't know, mistakenly think they did?
Well, on all the specific allegations, I've spoken to Jason, I've spoken to people around him. I actually think some of the things in the news are not accurate, and I think he does actually have evidence about emails around things around some of his honorary professorships. So
they have given official statements to the media saying that he did not have these roles.
Well,
so they lying to the media.
The bigger question is, why is this even a story? This is a professor at Cambridge. This is not an elected official. It's not the Prime Minister. This is essentially somebody who's not in the public eye, who's been put under all of this scrutiny, which no other academic is getting, by the way. And the reason is, and it's got underlining all of this, is that to prove that he's this DEI hire, to prove that Cambridge hired him in because black people shouldn't be hired at the University of Cambridge, right? And that's the issue. That's why people have been hounding him for the last 3 years. And that's why now every single piece of his biography is under scrutiny, when no one else is getting this level of scrutiny.
Okay, I would suggest that every academic at every university should now be asked to provide evidence of every claim they've made on their CV, as most of us have to do when we apply for a job. But here's the thing.
If you did, I promise you, a lot of these big professors you think are wonderful would unravel in a second.
Yeah, and I'd be quite happy for them all to be fired because they committed gross misconduct by lying on their application. Here's the thing, though. You said, basically, people wanted to prove he didn't deserve the job. He'd been hired because he was a young black man. He had a wonderful rags to riches story. He ticked boxes, neurodiversity, ethnic minority, all of these stories about his life that actually they wanted to tick a box. It seems to me that a lot of the claim is that he got the job because of that. You're saying he's lost the job and has been hounded, in your words, for 3 years because of his identity. It can't be both.
No, it's not both. It's one. It's very clearly one. There are 26,000 professors in this country and less than 200 of us are black. In fact, I was made redundant the other day after 12 years of being excellent at my job. Jason Ardy is no longer a professor. It is almost impossible for... It is almost impossible for black people to become professors.
What do you mean it's almost impossible? Are you saying that universities, which are renowned for being obsessed with diversity, equity, inclusion, are going, we don't want to have any black people in top roles?
No, that's the lie. Universities are not woke. Universities are not left-wing. Universities are some of the most racist institutions you can ever be in. I've worked and been a student for the last 24 years. Not one time has me being black been a beneficial. It's actually lost me my job in many occasions. And the evidence is very clear. There's literally less than 200 black professors. We can't all get on a plane together because if it crashes, we'll all be gone.
But here's the thing. You know, the whole point of a professorship is it's tenure for life, doesn't it? So that these jobs don't come up. So once someone has a job, and given actually, again, the demographics of this country and the academic achievements of children who largely have come from immigrant backgrounds in the past, who've been in working class inner city families with lots of really, frankly, rubbish schools and haven't been able to reach their full potential, are then held back, I mean, unlikely to make it to that stage. We have seen in recent years a wonderful explosion in the number of young people from ethnic minorities going to university. We will see that change over the years, but that's a long-term demographic sociology.
No. So, I'm sorry, that's not... For one, 3% of the population is black. Black students are overrepresented in undergraduate, but actually underrepresented in masters and PhD because of the idea that we can't think.
No, it's actually because of the choice of university of a lot of young black people.
It's not about the choice of university. It's about it's about the choices you have are limited when you are black. But there's a whole conversation about it. But the point I make here is, there is nobody sensible who will tell you that being black gets you benefits in academia.
Except people looking at Jason Arday's appointment would say he got that job and no one checked his credentials. Maybe they don't check anyone's credentials. That's a fair point, and we should do more of that because he was too good a story. Cambridge University, far from not hiring him, he was their poster boy. He was out on the BBC. He was doing documentaries. He was feted everywhere. He was the youngest black academic appointed to Cambridge University. Because he's talented. I've heard some of his interviews and I've read some of the texts that he's written, but he didn't strike me, with all due respect, as particularly articulate or talented. Now, he claimed he had dyslexia. I understand that.
I'm going to have to push back on this because the idea that the Cambridge professor is the most articulate and talented, there is some work comes out of Cambridge is absolute garbage.
Oh, I agree with you.
It's not this idea. This is the elite pinnacle of knowledge. It's complete nonsense anyway.
I agree with you. I'm particularly also. I'm rather the view that Professor of Sociology of Education. I'm not entirely sure that this is the most elite academic subject. I'm going to throw that out there. But here's the thing.
No, but can I come back to this credential thing? The credential is important, right? And the only claims around his credentials: one, the PhD, investigated by the establishment.
Yeah, we said that.
It was fine, right?
No,
Two,
it wasn't fine.
Journal articles.
No, it wasn't fine. It just wasn't academic misconduct.
Yeah,
and there have been subsequent allegations that have not yet been investigated.
So let's just say it's not plagiarism. There's no evidence he plagiarized. I said I read his PhD. He did not plagiarize. It's not the greatest.
There are huge sections which are not attributed to the person who wrote the thesis, where the words are taken, whole paragraphs and sections are taken word for word, but they weren't attributed. This was called an honest and reasonable error.
Can I just say, as somebody who is a professor and as somebody who's marked many PhDs, and I've read his PhD, that's not plagiarism. So this is it's not the best scholarship, but it's not plagiarism. On the other thing was the academic articles. Why would journals? Once they've been told there've been complaints and been given evidence, they've looked at the journal articles, they don't know him, they're not employing him. Why would they let those go through if they didn't think it was credible? There's no reason why. They looked at it and said it's fine. So that's the credential issue.
Okay.
Did he exaggerate how many miles
But he
ran?
claimed to have written a book that he hadn't written, had published. He claimed all these numerous academic positions that he has never held. Here's some of the other claims he's made. I mean, again, you might argue these aren't academic issues, but he claimed, he had autism. He was diagnosed at 3 years old. He was mute to the age of 11. He was illiterate to the age of 18. He then, when he did his academic work, did his PhD, that he was able to do his viva, the oral exam, 3 weeks after having brain surgery for a brain tumour. He's claimed that he was in this BBC series 7 Up that was 20 years before he was born.
He didn't claim that.
He claimed it in 2 interviews on record.
He said he was in a program that was 7 Up. He subsequently said that program was not the TV program.
Called
he was
7
a black. He said, and I don't have any evidence against this. This is a black community program led by mothers.
No.
He never said he was in the BBC 7 Up.
He never said it. Kehinde, he claimed he was in the BBC series 7 Up, and when it was exposed to him that he couldn't have been because it was 20 years before he was born, he then said he'd used the term 7 Up informally as a shorthand illustration of the concept.
Look, he never said BBC. I've watched the thing. He said 7 Up program, and everybody assumes BBC. Black people also organise things in the community. I don't know that not to be true.
He also claimed he was the victim of racist intimidation. A masked man once with a knife at threatening him when there was huge amounts of CCTV that apparently didn't show it. Parents got sent a pig's head related to his academic work. Police investigated, no evidence of this, no evidence from the butcher who claimed it was from. Loads of things. He claimed he ran 3 or 30 marathons in 35 days. He ran the last 9 with a leg fracture, 600 miles in 6 days. Later he changed it to 12 days. Raised £5.5 million for charity. Whenever these things are questioned, when they're made again and again and again on websites, in writing, by him in speeches and in interviews, he then changes his story and says, oh, no, it was a syndicate of people and I can't disclose their names because we all signed non-disclosure agreements. He's always got an explanation, but his story never seems to be validated.
This is the point I make, though. What does any of that have to do with his academic credentials?
I said this is not academic.
He does. It has nothing to do with it.
It suggests this is a man who is a Walter Mitty character who lives a life which is which is surrounded by claims in every area which are at with the best will in the world unverified.
Yeah, but this is not relevant to anything, and this wouldn't be. I think if we're honest about this wouldn't be a story without the plagiarism allegations. That's what's the start of this.
Would it be a story if he was white?
It wouldn't be a story if he was white at all, because he wouldn't have had there's no scrutiny that would have been put on him.
Well, he wouldn't have become famous, would he? He wouldn't have been a guest editor on the Today programme, the BBC, because he wasn't the youngest white professor at Cambridge.
He was the guest editor because he was talented. He couldn't be talented. I've done things in the media because I'm good at things, not because I'm black. Like, we don't just get things because we're black. We get things because we're good. Right? I don't think anybody can say he's not.
So wait a minute. So we got all of these things because he's good, and yet Cambridge didn't want to hire a black man. They wouldn't hire another black man, and it's all racism. Again, it can't be both. So he's being hired again and again and again because of his great talent, and yet the rest of the time the world is a horrible racist place.
if there's less than 200 professors who are black, you honestly want me to believe that Cambridge went, oh, let's just pick
there are fewer women. There are fewer women who are judges. It's not necessarily because there may be some sexism, maybe some racism. However, women were not in large part in those roles eligible to become judges for many years, and people stay in those roles for a long time.
Okay, so look, we can debate the merits of why this is, but the fact is it's very difficult and unlikely if you are black to become a professor. In fact, it's probably more likely you dying in the next 20 minutes than you becoming a professor. So if you really want me to believe that Cambridge are just so desperate, they just pick out some
You're saying that our great academic institutions, which go out of their way to talk on and go on about being woke and DEI all the time, are going out of their way not to hire talented black people.
Academic institutions that where less than 1% of the professorship are black, that are based on racist ideas and knowledge, that still...
tell us about racist...
Today.
No, this is going to be fun. Tell us about racist ideas of knowledge, Kehinde.
Oh my God, I can give you a whole lecture on this, but the idea that black people are human beings...
We only got a short interview. Yeah.
I know what to do, but the idea that I'm not a human being, where does that come from? The same people who still teach at universities today. The idea that I am not a human being.
Who said that?
Race, science, Immanuel Kant, Rousseau, Locke, all of the key thinkers who still get taught in universities today didn't believe I was a human being. Racial science until 1945 was accepted in universities.
You would still teach great philosophers, even if they had the unfortunate, horrible racist ideas of their time.
That's not the time, no, because at the same time you had abolitionists, you had revolutionaries, you had black people existed at this time, so we can forget all the horrible racism. We can forget all the horrible racism of the Enlightenment thinkers, but we're supposed to.
I'm not quite sure why that makes it
for making up that he ran a few marathons.
Racist ideas of knowledge. Knowledge is either knowledge or it's not. Can I ask you? You signed this letter that was organised by the Good Law Project. You're one of the many signatures. Apparently 15. They claim 15,000 in total signed. Again. I assume that's verifiable. Basically, he's saying this has been a sustained and malicious attack on the academic integrity of Professor Ade. They say when a distinguished black academic is repeatedly subjected to baseless allegations after being fully exonerated, it signals there is an attempt to undermine black people who hold positions of influence. Is it also the case that it's reasonable that the police should have been called in against a fellow academic, Dr. David Harris, but also a journalist at the Times Higher Education, Jack Grove, simply for asking questions, sending polite emails asking for academic claims to be verified?
You have to put that in the context of 3 years of harassment. It's not just one person sending emails, it's multiple emails. And if
Should the police be called on a journalist asking an academic to verify his academic claims?
I think any question like that is in a vacuum. You were talking about...
It's not. It's literally happened. Was he right?
If you were subject to a 3-year campaign of harassment, would you say actually no?
But is it a campaign of harassment, or are people asking questions and I haven't been able to prove myself?
No, if the question is about my PhD, which has been investigated and is bad,
and other allegations,
that is harassment.
There are lots of other allegations of claims that he's made. I've went through an awful lot of them. We spent 20 minutes going through an awful lot of them. Is that harassment? Is me asking the same question again and again and not getting a substantive answer harassment?
If I say I don't want to talk to you and you keep trying to talk to me, yes, that is a definition of harassment. I believe that is what harassment is. So,
but you say that he's not a public figure. If you are a senior academic at an academic institution and you do lots of public-facing interviews and take that role, you have chosen to place yourself in the public eye and to face that scrutiny. In the same way that I, doing my job, I face public scrutiny, and quite rightly.
Must be able to accept the level of scrutiny on him. The fact this is even a story is ridiculous. He's not.
But it wouldn't be a story if all of it was
anybody
true.
Know?
If everything that he's ever said was true, and there was evidence for anything and everything he'd said, it wouldn't be a story, would it? No, he's created the story.
No, he has not. He took a job he was qualified for and got. And now that since then he's been harassed because people don't believe black people should be at Cambridge. That's actually the
people
story.
Don't believe that black people should be at Cambridge.
Yes. There's actually a playbook of this where they try and find everything they can. And I would stress, prior to Cambridge, none of this happened. It's only happened when he went to Cambridge.
Because he got into the public eye as the youngest black professor at Cambridge.
And then people said, how do we tear him down? If he was white, this never would have happened. It's outrageous, the level of...
I have to say, Kehinde, one thing I think we will agree on, I think we absolutely would like to see the credentials of every senior academic in the academic.
And I promise you it would fall apart.
Yeah, and if it does, and if it does, then that's a jolly good thing, because I don't want people like that teaching our youngsters. Time is again, so Professor Kehinde Andrews, so appreciate you joining us. I couldn't disagree with you more, but we've done it in a very good-spirited way. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd love to hear your response to what what Kehinde Andrews had to say. 0344 499 1000. Very quick response from Philip Ingram, because we've got to get to a break.
To be a professor, it goes on his personal journey and his academia. Kehinde turned around and said his academics weren't very good. He thought his PhD wasn't particularly well written, and his personal journey's come in question. He shouldn't be a professor.
Simple as that. Yeah, but he's been harassed. Tell us what you think. 0344 499 1000. Up next, Chris Phillips on the Chris Kaba case, and plenty more. This is Talk.
A week now spent learning the detailed ropes and the administration and all the problems that will face him a month or 6 weeks later on, when events in the Commons, events elsewhere start hitting him. So I think he will come to regret it. I understand it's not just been in a job for a fortnight. He's fought an exhausting by-election. He was Mayor of Greater Manchester. So I understand why he's gone, but I just think practically he is making a mistake.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 10:53 is the time. Let's get straight to my next guest, Chris Phillips, former senior police officer and former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office. Thank you for joining us, Chris. Sorry we're so late getting to you.
Good morning,
Thank you, George. Let's get straight to it. No misconduct case against Sergeant Martin Blake, who shot dead Chris Kaba, a known, dangerous, long list of convictions gangster back in 2022. He's already been exonerated by a jury of murder charge, which is outrageously brought. And the IOPC have finally said they're not going to bring misconduct charges. This is the right decision, isn't it?
Well, of course it is. And this secondary investigation should never have taken place. The IOPC are a law unto themselves, and this officer has been put through the ringer now for 4 extra years that wasn't needed. He's been found not guilty in a court, and that should have been the end of it. Yeah,
it is. I mean, again, I don't think the murder charge had ever been brought. It was very, very clear from the jury's decision so quickly that they agreed with that, and it's absolutely extraordinary. I'm still amazed that any officer will agree to actually carry a firearm now, given that undoubtedly, even if they do the right thing, save their life, their colleagues' lives, the lives of the public, and frankly, are wrong and out of the system. And I've said I'd like to buy Sergeant Martin Blake a pint and thank him myself personally for what he did to keep London safer for the rest of us who aren't gangsters. But they're going to face years of investigation and getting named in the media. I mean, it was outrageous of a judge to agree to name Sergeant Martin Blake, putting him and his family at risk.
Yeah, and listen, officers go out, and I'm with you. I don't know why any police officer would carry a gun these days. I don't actually know why anyone would be a police officer these days, because the lack of support from this country is atrocious. You know, what we're seeing with Andrew Harper's murderers being released early, all that kind of stuff just must turn police officers away from actually doing their job, and they still do it. It's such a difficult job that they do. They're making instant decisions. And they're not being supported by the government. They're not being supported by the country, actually. And the IOPC is just a big joke.
No, indeed, it's very interesting that the boss of the Met has said very, very clearly he thinks that it's outrageous and it's disgraceful the way that police officers are treated. This is the Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley. He says the system for holding police to account is broken. I think we can safely say that. We certainly have a prison system that's broken. What do you make of the news that now we're looking at not just people who've committed very, very serious violent crimes, domestic abuse, and even a manslaughter being freed under this early release scheme from October now, delayed by a month by the Prime Minister, but also some grooming gang members being released just a fraction through their jail sentences?
Well, none of this should be happening, and it shouldn't have got to this stage. I would say, Julia, that in the 1980s, I was as a police officer, we were used to house the overflow from the prisons. So police stations were used. I would often, you do it on overtime, but you would do it. So this lack of prison space is not new. It's been going for 40 years plus that there's been a lack of prison.
It hasn't just happened. Everyone says it happened under the Tories. Labour are picking up the pieces. It happened under the Tories. It got worse under the Tories. They actually lengthened the sentences and for some reason didn't think, we've got to have more people in prison for longer. Maybe we should build more prisons. I mean, again, an abject failure of government. And
this is at a time when police officers are being criticised because they're not arresting enough people.
Yes.
What if they did arrest enough people?
What's the point?
And all these people that committing crime were sentenced to prison as they should be. It's an intolerable situation, and really, it's a bit like the NHS. Someone has got to get a long-term view as to what we're going to do. Yeah. We've got thousands and thousands of immigrants that people from other countries that are in our prison system that should be dealt with. We should find a way of housing them in a way that's going to, either move people out of the country but make sure we keep them in custody.
Absolutely. Well, one person who did get arrested is a woman who was arrested after 4 people were stabbed in Covent Garden in the West End of London. A woman was caught by police. I mean, thankfully, very, very quickly, 3 people stabbed with scissors and a 4th, all needing hospital treatment. Thankfully, not life-threatening. I have to say, though, given the state of the terrible reporting in this country and the woke ideas we see, when I saw a woman had been arrested for stabbing, I thought, is it a woman or is it a man who identifies as a woman? And then you see the pictures. And weirdly, we can tell what a woman looks like and what a man looks like. And it was a woman who's been arrested. And the police say they believe this was a mental health issue. And we've got an ongoing issue with this, haven't we? The genuine cases where very, very, very troubled, very dangerous people. We saw it with the Nottingham killer, Valdo Callicane, and I would say Axel Ruda Cabana as well. I mean, evil, but also crazy. There are an awful lot of, frankly, crazy people out there.
Yeah, and the interesting term that was used was this was an isolated incident. It's far from isolated. Yeah. We have got, as I say, a few years ago, we had hospitals full of people with serious mental illnesses. Those hospitals were all closed. Those people were released into the communities. I've seen it with my very own eyes where they were released into shared housing between 2 or 3 of them, maybe 4 or 5. And a social worker would pop around once a week to make sure they're all taking their medication. Yeah. And they don't. And the social workers have been cut. So, we are in a system that just needs money spent on it. And unfortunately, that money doesn't seem to be there. And we're going to have to deal with this problem because there are so many people who are mad, bad and sad in our society.
Yeah, I mean, care in the community, but there is no care going on. Chris Phillips, great to talk to you. Also, must mention a record 10,293 referrals being made to the Prevent Anti-Extremism scheme. The latest figures we've just got out, it's up 39% on the year before. Something is going on, but there's referrals, as we know from the Axel Ruda Cabana case and others, don't necessarily mean any action is taken. Going to be carrying on talking about all the big topics up next. Do stay tuned. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, we do try our best. Antidote to idiocy. 11:03 is the time. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Great to have your company today. Lots to talk about, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, watching on YouTube, and all the other ways of watching and listening. Great to have your company. Don't forget to go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. I'm sure we'll have it on the YouTube page very, very soon. My interview with Kehinde Andrews, a black academic who claims actually that Jason Arday has been hounded basically out of Cambridge University simply because he is black. Don't think you want to miss that interview, so do have a look at that. If you're there, hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. We're going to discuss more on that. We're discussing more on Kemi Badenoch saying she'll never form a coalition with Reform UK because they're woke. She couldn't trust Robert Jenrick or Suella Braverman. She's also decided to keep on the former neo-Nazi Joshua Bonehill-Payne, who withdrew as a Conservative council candidate following a backlash over his selection for numerous convictions and harassment of a Labour Jewish MP. But he's going to be kept on as an advisor on counter-extremism. Plus, the Green Party leader Zach Polanski did a press conference yesterday, and amazingly, it wasn't about Israel for a change. It was actually about climate change. I know, I was surprised as you are. He declared that oil and gas companies should be taxed even more to help fight Britain's wildfires. I don't understand the link either, but, you know, I'm sure he does in his own way. I don't know why he can't just hypnotise the wildfires not to start like he does with growing breasts. That's just a suggestion. But anyway, loads to talk about. I particularly want to hear from you about Professor Jason Arday. What does the scandal tell us about the state of British universities? Do get in touch. 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. So I'd like to say, still joining me is Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer, and unlike it would appear, Jason Arday, able to prove that he does have an MBE and that he was a senior military intelligence officer. There is documentation, there are witnesses, these things actually happened.
And I've got photographs that I can pull up.
I love it. He's willing to pull up. No, but this is the thing.
But
I changed job titles in a job some while ago, and I changed it, and therefore going through a formal process, had to submit my qualifications, and I'm thinking, oh God, I don't know where the A-level certificates are. They're somewhere in a drawer somewhere. Yeah. But it was like my degrees from universities, got a degree and a master's, and I got a diploma from Cardiff University for journalism, and they said we've got no record of that, and I went, oh God, I've not been asked for it in 20 years, and I don't think I ever did graduate. I didn't go through a formal ceremony. I just left and went on and worked on a local paper. So it took me a month. I mean, and this company were going, well, you have to provide it. You can't have the job. You can't change job titles. And I had to go back to university that I'd been at years ago and say, could you, I mean, this is when I was like 25, 26. Could you provide me with proof that I got a diploma in journalism studies, postgraduate diploma, and I got it. I think, great, thank you very much, submitted it. But I couldn't formalise the job until I'd done that. Now, I find it extraordinary that someone could get a job as a professor at one of the leading universities in the world, Cambridge University, and not actually have to provide proof of things. I mean, there's question marks about his PhD, plagiarism or not, that's being disputed. But the fact that he's claimed to have had honorary academic positions at 3 universities, 2 in the UK, 1 in the US, all of whom have now said, no, you didn't. Now, things like that. I don't think you mistake things that he claimed to have written a book, then published a book. That was never published, as far as we're aware, never actually submitted. It was commissioned, but as far as we're not even written. All the other claims that he had done his viva for his PhD 3 weeks after having had surgery for a brain tumour. There's no. I mean, there's no. Well, I'm sure there's proof of this, Jason Arday, but there's no one who's actually come forward with any of that. That he was in a BBC series 7 Up. Apparently, he didn't mention the BBC, so it must have been a different programme he was talking about. Claim of racist intimidation on 2 or 3 occasions, investigated by the police, no evidence found. Claimed he ran 30 marathons in 35 days. Ran the last 9 with a leg fracture. I mean, all credit. This guy is a magnificent athlete of elite international standards, and yet no record of any of these things. Claims he raised £5.5 million for charity. Again, no records of this. He has seen no witnesses, no photos, no pictures of him handing over a big cheque to a charity. A few £1,000s he definitely raised, but we're talking a few £1,000s. Later claimed it was a syndicate of 100 people, and for some reason they've all signed non-disclosure agreements. So
as you do.
So, as you do. Yeah, I mean, story after story after story of his personal life, claims of criminal action, his academic claims, simply don't add up. He's clearly a Walter Mitty character. He has resigned from Cambridge. He did so hours after Cambridge said we're now investigating whether or not some of these claims, these academic qualifications and positions were actually verifiable. But it's extraordinary that he got the job without anyone verifying any of this stuff. As our guest Kehinde Andrews said, if you investigate a lot of these people, you'll find their claims are tosh. Maybe we need to start...
Maybe we need to.
Because ultimately these people, these are private institutions, universities, they're actually ultimately paid by the public purse because governments subsidise universities and give them money via the student loans. Students, he's taught students. People are being taught by a man whose credentials, frankly, are in question at this current time. The claim is, from many of his supporters, 15,000 people signing a letter of support via the Good Lard Project, and Kehinde Andrews just now, that basically this is about people wanting to bring a prominent, successful young black man down. This is about black people being hounded from academia.
The colour of his skin's irrelevant, apart from...
Well, apart from when I think it was relevant to his appointment.
Apart from the fact that it's a major part of his personal story, and he'll have been appointed a professor at Cambridge University for two things. His extraordinary personal story, the way it's been articulated,
autism, he was mute until he was 11, illiterate until 18,
which is fantastic. But then that backed up by academic prowess. But Professor Kehinde Andrews admitted, having read his PhD, he said it wasn't particularly good. And that was his assessment, and he says he marks PhDs all the time.
And yet he got a job at a prestigious university.
And therefore something smells. You would expect that professors at Cambridge University are not just those that are good or something else. They should be exceptional.
I've been taught at Oxford University, a similarly standard university.
Not as good as Cambridge.
Yeah, of course you would say that, the other place. And I have to say, I had some absolutely brilliant teachers. I had the misfortune of being taught by, the world expert on some subjects. So you couldn't bluff your way through too many of those. Although I did give it a good try. Those meetings. But I mean. Largely, these people, a lot of them are quite weird. Academics can often be quite strange fellows and women. But fundamentally, very, very, intellectually, really, really solid. I wouldn't question the credentials, the academic credentials of anyone who taught me, in terms of their knowledge and their ability. Their interest in teaching students, I would absolutely question in a lot of cases. However, it seems to me it's very, very clear that a lot of people are claiming this man lost his job because he was black, and he's been hounded and questioned because he was black. It seems to me he only got the job because he was black. He ticked a lot of boxes under DEI. And I'm not saying that because I am racist, because apparently that would be the viewpoint. I don't think that his credentials are good enough to get that higher unless there were other considerations. And one was that Cambridge University, regarded for a long time as male, pale and stale, too white, too stuck in its ways, all the stuff about working class kids and black kids and women not getting ahead, that actually they absolutely loved having this great news story about this young, incredibly, charismatic, a young black man with he was neurodivergent, rags to riches, and black. I mean, he ticked so many boxes. He was an absolute gift of a hire, and it was celebrated by the university, celebrated in the media, interview after interview. I know he's been on this station in the past, but actually, He didn't deserve the job, it would appear. No, on the current information.
He didn't lose the job because he's black. He's decided to resign from the job because he's under scrutiny, and that scrutiny is looking at his
scrutiny, you said.
Well, it's Cambridge University says the first time they've done it. The press have done what the press is supposed to do and hold.
The argument from Kehinde Andrews and others is that there wouldn't be the scrutiny if it was a white professor.
Well, the scrutiny from the white professor that got accused was from the police. We're seeing exactly the same scrutiny.
And a journalist.
And a journalist getting scrutiny from the police. So, everyone is just throwing out blame bombs to try and distract people.
There would be no scrutiny if there weren't any question marks.
Well, exactly.
It's like if you date somebody. If you're like, God forbid, never want to be out there. But even like my husband, if my husband said something which was provably untrue, like I was at this work event and then I found out, no, there's pictures of you in the pub, someone else took, you're lying. So what else are you lying about? You would be entitled to say what else do you routinely lie about?
Correct. And Cambridge University, it's not as diverse if you look at across the board as we see within the country. 25 to 30% of undergraduate students are from a BAME background. 15%.
We don't say BAME anymore. Apparently, that was the thing you had to say, and then it became a racist thing to say. Do try and keep up, Philip.
Terrible. Then 15% of staff are whatever the new acronym for BAME is, and 10% of the leadership.
Well over the actual population of the country.
The population of the country, if you take the United Kingdom as a whole, it comes out apparently as 18%, which surprised me.
But you look at
that's a quick AI
our guest
search.
Kehinde Andrews was saying that it's very difficult to get there's a tiny number of black academics and professors, but that is because people who become a professor for decades,
Correct.
you get to life tenure basically. You can't be sacked, so that's how you're supposed to have academic freedom. Unless you get pushed out because you don't believe that men can become women, you're Kathleen Stock. But basically, there are social demographic reasons why you see more men, more white people. It's a largely white country, and for many years, the only people who were doing PhDs or going to the schools and universities that were good enough to get you to that stage of academic qualification were largely white people.
And the other thing here is Cambridge have embarrassed themselves enormously because they've appointed a professor. They've now said that they have to investigate, and they're saying new information. I'm sorry, it's not new information. Therefore, what they are admitting is that their appointments process for professors. It doesn't matter what colour skin you are. The appointment process for professors is not rigorous and does not investigate the academic background and other claims from those that have applied for the roles.
Which is an abject failure. And again, I'm very, very happy for them to insist that actually every single academic has to produce all of the claims that they have made.
There needs to be an audit across all our universities. Otherwise, public money needs to be withdrawn. Some of the
interviews you watch with Jason Ardate, it is fascinating. His face, it's almost like he's like, I can't believe that people have been fooled by this.
But there's some very good people out there who fool an awful lot of people. I've come across a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Look, let's talk about something completely different. Right now, Zia Youssef, the Home Affairs spokesman for the Reform Party, he's giving a press conference, second in a week. He was alongside, of course, Nigel Farage early in the week. He's promising a new tip line, the Turkish barber tip line, it's been dubbed, to report illegal workers if Reform get in. And I have to say, I'm all in favour of this. Under these plans, basically, police and trading standards would be required to follow up on credible tips and reports, those reports that lead to a successful prosecution, that will be rewarded with a share of fines generated. That's good. Parties pledged to send bosses and firms to jail if they employ illegal migrants. I think this is absolutely required. And fine companies 10% of their global revenues if they employ migrants illegally. And again, we've got this issue, haven't we, about illegal migrants working, basically being given the jobs via the Deliveroo's, the Just Eats and things like that. But we also see again and again and again that businesses are hiring illegal workers. Currently, they face a fine of up to £60,000 per worker, but and supposedly in serious cases, prison sentences up to 5 years. But they're simply not being enforced. I mean, even the BBC has got round to actually investigating this. But we see also we've got these skilled visas, supposedly skilled worker visas, and you walk along, Whitechapel Road or Bethnal Green Road in East End London. You've got barbers and vape shops who are sponsoring like 50 people a year to come over here as skilled workers. Someone is not doing their job properly, or someone is taking a backhander at the Home Office, I'm afraid, to pass all these along. These are, again, you walk along any high street now, you see all these shops. We know there's a lot of these shops are selling stuff under the counter, they're selling illegal goods, they're selling stuff to underage kids. Nothing is happening, nothing is being done. They're employing illegal workers. They're often places where you can go make a payment to send money abroad. There's just a lot of question marks, and it's all happening in plain sight. I used a car wash a month or so ago, and it was literally like, I don't think anyone is legal. Oh, I'm just going on. They're like, can I pay by card? I mean, they looked at me like, are you kidding me? And I'm thinking, actually, I don't want to give my card to these guys. But this is happening in plain sight everywhere. Nothing is happening. It seems to me it's very, very simple. We don't have to have identity cards brought in, which is what Keir Starmer thought was the solution. And of course, Tony Blair is the solution to everything about illegal working. You just need to enforce the law. And it needs to be very simple. You hire someone illegally who has no right to work here when you are required by law to check. When I employed like a nanny or a cleaner, I get a copy of their passport. I want to know that you're legally allowed to work in this country, you're an EU worker or whatever, you know. I can't be hiring someone who's illegal. I don't want to hire someone who's illegal, but I definitely, on my job, I can't do it. But I would not. But it's just extraordinary. All these people are hiring people, and there's no punishment. You hire someone illegally, unless you've been given unbelievably good fake documents that you reasonably thought were true, I'm sorry, you go to prison. And it needs to be that, not just a fine. It needs to be something seriously significant that makes someone go, this is not worth my while.
There's a lot of rules in place in this country already that, if they were properly applied, would act as a deterrent for people coming across.
It's doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sense.
Yes, if is the biggest word in the English language. We need to get to a position where people are forced to apply the rules.
We never, virtually every time we're told there's a new law, we need a new law. We don't
need a new law.
We just need to enforce the laws we've got.
And if you're going to bring in a new law, you then need to bring in the resources to make sure it's properly enforced, because having something on the statute books is, tick, that's the government tick box. Tick, we've solved it.
But also, I like this. I like this incentive. Like, if you report someone, now look, there'll be a lot of people who might want to.
I support this idea.
They might actually, they might have a bit of an issue with a nearby company, and they're making false claims. Well, again, if they're making obvious false claims, then I'm sorry.
Then they get prosecuted
they should get prosecuted as well. We should have more of that. But I mean, more than 9,000 migrants were arrested for illegal working last year, according to the Home Office. 2,500 of those were from restaurants, takeaways and cafe work. 1,000 were delivery and warehouse services, beauty, barbers and nail bars, another 1,000. I mean, I'm sorry. That is a drop in the ocean of the number of people working illegally. And it's not for us to sit there when you go and have your pedicure done before your summer holiday to say, hello, are you here illegally? It's really, really simple. Why are the councils, why are they not just sending around 20 times? Why are they not just walking around, literally employ people in every area, and you literally spend your day walking around, you go into a business, everybody in here needs to provide me with their ID and their permit to work.
I'm slightly more draconian than this. Every individual, before they get granted asylum, is in this country illegally.
Yes.
And therefore they should be held in secure camps where they can't get out and they can't get work and everything else until their application is processed and they're thrown out.
I'm going to throw out a really mad idea. I'm thinking that when people are here illegally, they should be deported.
Oh,
what?
Maybe
sorry, I went a bit far right then, didn't I? A bit far right.
Maybe sent to Rwanda. I'm going a bit Tory.
I don't care where they're sent. I've got to be honest with you. I'm dropping people in oceans at this point. Figure of speech. I genuinely, I'm just at the point. I just don't, and it's really interesting. I think, what they call the Overton window, the sort of the acceptable window of opinions you're allowed to have. I don't think that anyone in most of the last 10 decades, the last century, would have thought it was controversial to say that someone who was in the country illegally should be deported. This is not a controversial viewpoint, and yet now it's like, ooh, very far right of you. My strong preference would be that people who arrive by boats illegally, young men, people working legally, people committing crime. Absolutely. Should we have a debate about that? I don't think so. Bye-bye, thank you very much. I'm locked up until that is possible, in not very nice conditions. No Game Boys, no Xboxes. But absolutely, even if you're, a woman, you're a mother, your children, I'm really, really sorry. If you don't have a right to be here from another country, you can renounce your citizenship you want. I don't care. We're sending you back there. And if the country refuses to take you, we will send you to some not very other pleasant place.
Exactly.
And I'm sorry, it is going to have to include children. And I know that sounds awful, but it is going to have to include children, because otherwise people will then use children as pawns. As a weapon.
And you'll find children being bought to be used
and they
for
already
that.
are. They already
and that
are.
will just feed organised crime.
Yeah, we saw what happened with Mo Farah.
Yeah.
Basically, he was basically trafficked in that way. I just don't think any of this is controversial. Let's also talk again. I'm not going to talk more about Gianni Infantino staying as FIFA president, because the yawning got too loud last time from him. The NHS, Yvette Cooper. I always have to remember, what job are you in today, Yvette? I wonder if Yvette sometimes walks into the wrong ministry. She's been shuffled around so many times. Pretty much always a demotion. But Yvette Cooper, who's failed in every job she's ever done, as far as I can tell, she's the NHS unveiling new mental health units, A&Es, basically, dropping clinics in banks and libraries. It's the biggest redesign in a generation. But basically, the idea is that we are actually going to have places for people who are in severe distress because of their mental health, somewhere for them to go. The NHS is going to open 100 high street mental health centres. I don't think, are there any libraries and banks left to do that? I suppose they've all closed down, they can take over the buildings. And the idea is there'll be dedicated mental health emergency departments as well, so people in crisis don't wait long waits in regular A&Es, but also, frankly, for other people waiting in A&E, not being surrounded by often, frankly, terrifying people in a great state of distress, who are often threatening and violent. This is a good thing. I mean, this is a very good thing. 59 mental health emergency departments offering same-day support. An awful lot of the A&E units now are just dealing with mental health issues. An awful lot of our police time, ambulance time, and others, they're not being able to go to someone with a heart attack. They're not being able to go to someone, or choose not to go to someone who's been a victim of crime, because they are dealing with mental health cases. This is a long overdue solution. If it all happens.
Yeah, if it all happens, I think it's a fantastic solution. You're bringing in your special mental health A&E type facilities.
I don't know where the staffing's coming from or the funding.
Well, exactly. So there's a lot of questions that come into it. And the other thing is, if it works, I do hope it's rolled out across the whole of the United Kingdom, not just in England, because it's an NHS England initiative at the moment.
Always obsessed with this.
But it's really quite important.
Do you want to have devolved powers or not?
No, I don't.
Okay, fair point.
It's
that one.
You either everyone has devolved powers or no one has devolved powers. You don't have ministers prancing around Westminster pretending that they are you're doing things for the United Kingdom when they're not.
All right.
Including the Prime Minister.
Someone get him some herbal tea.
Our Prime Minister at the minute is the Mayor of England only at the moment.
Can I also ask you about, we just mentioned with Chris Phillips, this woman who was being held after a stabbing rampage in the West End, stabbed 4 people, 3 certainly believed to have been with scissors. Police say they believe it's a mental health issue. Police arrived on the scene very quickly. Again, as I mentioned earlier, when I saw this story, I immediately thought, oh, it's going to be a trans-identified man, and they're going to call this person a woman, but they're not actually a woman, because again and again we have violent cases turn out to be men. But actually it was a woman. Interesting, of course, you could tell straight away that the person on the ground was a woman, because it actually can tell the difference between men and women. It's weird, that, isn't it?
It is weird.
It's almost like it's biological. I mean, very, very worrying. But again, this is the ongoing issue. There are huge numbers of people. We've seen this with Valdo Callicane in Nottingham, Axel Cabana, of course, and in Southport, and okay, you know, mad and bad, I would say, but definitely mad as well. Yeah. And if people who are not taking their medication, not being treated properly, who are danger to us and others, and yet they're out on the streets and they're not being cared for. We have this whole idea of care in the community through people like mental institutions, because they were horrible, nasty Victorian institutions, but they didn't actually provide any care. They just threw them out on the streets. Yeah,
if the community doesn't have the staff in there to provide that professional level of care, then the threat is to the rest of the community. And this, unfortunately, seems to be what may have happened here. And we need to. If people are being put into the community for rehabilitation, for treatment, for everything else, there needs to be the staff there and the supervision. And this is where potentially this A&E for mental health cases might help contribute to that.
Exactly. There's also some stats that came out this morning. A record 10,293 referrals were made to the government's anti-extremist scheme, Prevent. That was in the year to September last year. That is up almost 40% on the 12 months before that. Of those 10,000 referrals where the age was known. And again, why isn't the age always known? There's lots of statistics about, these are date of birth, please, then we know your age. 11 to 15-year-olds made up the largest proportion, so over a third of them, over 3,500, followed by 16 to 17-year-olds, 13%. And some referrals, 393 of them, were for children aged 10 or under. We have a problem with radicalised kids. Now, here's the thing. Are they kids who've said something silly, said something stupid in the playground, referred to something, have they seen something online, whether it's, Islamist, or which is the vast majority of cases of terrorism and extremism in this country, or it's far right. But the worry is, even if people are referred to Prevent, as we saw again and again with the likes of Axel Cabana or others, numerous of the men, nearly all men, being convicted of terror attacks or attempted terror attacks in this country, had at some point been looked at by Prevent or by our security services. Nothing seems to be done.
Now, It's not. They are not extremists. If you're referred to prevent, it's not because you're an extremist. It is because there is a danger by it's been assessed by either your online behaviour, by a teacher, by another professional in the community, or by your actions where the police have had to get involved. And what they're trying to do is get you before you then become radicalised and make sure that you understand what it is that you've done and are signposted away from getting into that position. So I'm not surprised that there are more children being referred to prevent, because there is more information out there on the internet, and there's more grooming going on. So if someone looks at it multiple times, or they say something in class and the teacher picks up on it, it's right and proper that they're referred to prevent, so that a package can be put in place to assess them and to signpost them away from it before they get radicalised.
OK, good point. Thank you very much indeed. Love to hear your thoughts on that and everything else we're talking about. Lots of you getting in touch about Jason Arday, and indeed in particular that academic Kehinde Andrews, who's defending him and saying basically this is simply about racism and is about people trying to bring down a black academic. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
What's this about you approving of Andy Burnham going on a holiday?
Yes, I do. I've written an article for the newspaper. I think you're wrong. I think Carl Turner's wrong.
Why?
Why? Because people need holidays and we want politicians
15 days? 15 days. What nonsense are you writing in the iPaper?
Do you want to take it?
15, what is he, an oil rig worker? 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off? You don't think he'll come to regret this holiday? Let me tell you, he will.
I'd rather take it now than in October, and I want our politicians to be like normal people taking a holiday in the summer, but we'll get into all of that.
That's absolute rubbish.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. So 11:29 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000. Not surprisingly, that interview with Kehinde Andrews, a professor who's defending Jason Arday, says he's a victim, basically, of just racism. People just don't want a black professor at Cambridge University. It's kind of got you busy on the phone lines, hasn't it? What a surprise. Barry is in Norwich and wants to have his say. Hello, Barry.
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning.
I was cracking up when I was listening to that phone call. I was trying to prepare my dinner. And, I mean, really? Come on. Yeah, right. It's nothing to do with you being black. It's nothing to do with your religion. There's nothing to do with anything else. You've been caught out, mate. Yeah, right. Basically saying that you were something that you're not. And the fact being this guy was trying to defend him was, fair play to him, for, try to defend the indefensible. But when you said he was in a programme 20 years before he was born, yeah, I mean, come on.
Well, no, apparently that was just that he was referring to a concept, not an actual show, Barry. I mean, I genuinely, all credit to Jason Arday. I mean, his explanations of things. I mean, but in lots of interviews, you see him, he's smiling, and he's thinking, how am I getting away with all this? Some of the things he says may be true. There may be evidence we know, just investigators haven't found it yet. But here's the thing: I'm perfectly happy about every single academic having to prove all the things that they've said that their credentials are. I mean, I thought you had to do that to get a job in the first place. That people, I've had people who've worked on my show, and people have called up and said, "Oh, hello, can you give a reference for this person?" I mean, do people check references? I'm just not brave enough to lie on my CV.
I would imagine they do. I mean, I've had my CV checked numerous times, and I've had to give my name and date of birth and address and prove who I am. Yeah, that's just basic stuff. But this guy, he was trying to defend him. I mean, he's the sort of friend I want. Yeah, right. Because you know what? Yeah, right. He will go down with the ship, won't he?
Well, that's a fascinating thing. Gillian Morton, who's always on the wrong side of everything, the Good Law Project. They've got 15,000 the great and good. We've got loads of MPs. You've got Zach Polanski, the leader of the Green Party. We've got John McDonnell, former Shadow Chancellor. Got prominent academics at Cambridge University and elsewhere. So well-known figures, all defending this. I'm signing this letter, basically claiming this guy, Jason Arnott, is a victim of racism.
Just to give you one example, shall we? Can you remember the Nigel Farage incident, what he may have said when he was 13 in the playground, and the mad furore around that? Yeah, right. And now that's the problem with the left. Whenever they get caught out or anything like that, there's nothing to be seen here. Yeah, right. Done nothing wrong. Do you know what I mean? It was all a mistake.
Well, but it's never just there's nothing to see here. It's you're being racist.
Yeah, but they were hanging out Nigel Farage for something that he may or may not have said in the school playground, or when he was 12, 13, was it something? You know what I mean? Yeah, right.
Some of it was a bit older, but either way, stuff he said at school, exactly, as opposed to stuff that has been claimed as an adult to get a job, which is a completely different matter. Barry, I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you very much indeed. Pav is on the line. He's in Harrow. Hello, Pav.
Yeah, good morning, Julia. I'll try and keep this brief because I've got a lunchtime jog to Switzerland because I'm doing it in anticipation. I should be back by Mark's show when he's coming for Ian.
How much? Wait a second. How much money for charity do you plan to raise doing that? $5.5 million?
I don't want to disclose because there's non-disclosure agreements with fellow people, so I don't want to.
I completely understand, Pav. Fair point.
Just before I get into it, Julia, I thought Comedy Hour started in earnest on Monday or whatever it was when I heard Charlie from Restored it, but this guy's managed to transcend that. I'll be as brief as I can. I mean, first and foremost, he asked a question rhetorically, why is this a story? Well, it's a story, mate, because the institution in question just happens to be one of the preeminent institutions in the world. Yeah. So if he needs somebody to answer that, that's the first thing. His definition of plagiarism, Julia, was absolutely comical. Yeah. Because when he suggested that, and for those who know, some of us who've been in that world for various reasons, even if you fail to fully acknowledge a source, you can be accused of plagiarism. There's something that exists called reckless plagiarism, and people don't know this. I'm about to tell people who don't. Sometimes, even if you cite your own work and fail to rather cite it, you can be accused of plagiarism for doing that. Yeah. So I have no idea what he's talking about there. But the broader point, and this is where I had my head in my hands, and I thought, you know what, this is just absolutely ridiculous. When he came on and he said, because there are people, words to this effect, there are people who don't want black people at university. Now, I spent on-off 11 years at Oxford, so I reckon I might know a thing or two. The idea that anybody in the 21st century, and I mean anybody in any of those exalted positions, is going to sit there and say, you know what, today's Wednesday or Thursday, let's not take too many Chinese or Asians, this is the problem, because people will not call him out because of his background and ethnicity. He'll be allowed to spout continuous offal on various shows. Yep. All morning he's done it. He's in complete denial because he plainly doesn't understand what plagiarism is. And this is the problem the narrative is creating. He went back to Kant and Locke. Well, why did he stop there? Why didn't he say Julius Caesar was racist and Alexander the Great? Because this is the problem. And again, I speak as somebody who's a third generation myself, ethnic minority background. Until these people keep peddling this nonsense and ignoring facts such as the fact that since 2006, 21% of black children were accepted from state schools into university. That's 48 in 2024. Until they stop turning around and offering their own narrative, we're going to keep getting and coming back to this, because ultimately they are the racist ones, because they think that your skin color should somehow get you a special dispensation. Hello, there's plenty of ethnic minority people, Chinese people, Asian people, to name but two, who have been performing well in our schools and in higher education for decades. They didn't get a cheap ticket on. They didn't get any free pass. Why the hell should anybody else? And as far as, our day goes, and even with harassment, Julia, I'm not sure Kehinde Andrews actually is terribly au fait with to be honest, the law or indeed that. Because if he thinks that somebody trying, and these are his words, somebody trying to talk to you when you don't want to talk to him, it constitutes harassment, or 2 emails from a retiring professor constitutes harassment, then I suspect and hope that Santa Claus gets him a good dictionary, hopefully an Oxford or a Cambridge one, so he can look up these things and stop making a complete fool of himself when he comes on shows like yours where he's actually challenged, rather than people offering him supplications at the altar of DEI, which is frankly an absolute disgrace and has been and needs to be called out.
Pav, you've got Philip Ingram applauding you in the corner there, and me too. Thank you very much. No, nothing left to say on
what
that.
He said.
What he said. Fabian Harris, thank you. 11:37 is the time. Up next, we're going to talk to former Labour Special Advisor Paul Richards. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, 11:38. Philip Ingram. I mean, that was an extraordinary call from Pav. I mean,
I couldn't add anything. He put it across very eloquently and summed up exactly what the problem is.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that. Yeah, Kehinde Andrews is doing the media rounds today, and we'll see whether he gets challenged as much as he was, I think, on our show. We like to do that on the show, whoever we're talking to, whichever party or political or whatever viewpoint. Anyway, let's talk to my next guest, Paul Richards, former Labour Special Advisor. Very good morning to you, Paul.
Morning.
Thank
How are you?
Very well indeed. Thank you for joining us. I must ask you about Professor Jason Arday case, because an awful lot of the left, I don't know whether you've been one of those people, some 15,000 people signing a letter before he's actually resigned yesterday from Cambridge University, basically saying, for all intents and purposes, that the reason why anyone's asking questions about Professor Jason Arday is because they basically don't want black people at top universities. Do you think that's true?
No, I haven't signed the letter, nor would I, particularly now new evidence has come to light. But 2 things can be simultaneously true, Julia. One is that there may be a degree of racism in the way he's been treated since all this stuff came out in the news. And also, he is somebody who has serially obfuscated or exaggerated or deliberately made ambiguous things about his background, both professional and personal, to make himself look a lot better.
I get that they can both be true. What evidence do we have that there is any racist sentiment behind people asking
certainly
questions?
some of the. No, I think so. No, nothing wrong with asking questions. I think certainly a lot of the social media commentary has got that sort of tone and undertone to it.
I mean, some people might be arguing this was a guy who was celebrated as a high because he was black. So his colour was brought into it by, they didn't say this is a wonderful, fantastic new professor we've got. He was celebrated and feted, press release, as Cambridge University's youngest black professor. His colour was brought up, you know, I mean, he's only got all the roles he's got and all the publicity he's got because he was Cambridge University's youngest black professor. Not youngest professor, not professor, but youngest black professor. So
I think
his race has been brought into it by him and by the university, not by the people who are criticising him.
I think Cambridge are going to have to answer some tough questions around this, and the fact they've instigated a new investigation, I think, needs to get to the bottom of why were some of these so-called facts in the CV not checked. I mean, he's got a book coming out. Did the publishers not check some of the facts?
Well, apparently quite a few changes, according to Telegraph and the Mail.
Well, I'm not surprised.
Changed, yes.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Are you? I mean, some of the stuff in the cold light of day, and you could think, well, maybe once or twice there might be a sort of misstep or a misprint, or we all just bend the truth a little bit, don't we? I don't personally, but people do sometimes on their CVs. But it's so much of it. It's the 20, 30, 40 examples that are now emerging, and more to come, I am sure.
Yeah.
Which means that Cambridge really need to ask themselves some questions about the degree of scrutiny that they applied. And I hope they will apply the same scrutiny to anyone else.
Well, indeed, I think there's a strong argument.
Or I've raised millions of pounds, or I went with WaterAid to, dig wells or whatever.
Yeah.
Presumably all of these things would have been back-checked, regardless who was applying for such a prestigious and a high-level job in such an important institution. So I think it needs to be just, the same criteria needs to apply to everybody.
Oh no, but I think there's a strong argument that actually they should be saying to an awful lot of their academics. Yeah, can we have proof? And I find it extraordinary. The people who appointed him should probably be sacked themselves, or certainly have their academic qualifications scrutinised. Let's also talk about another big case that's been in the news. I mean, neither of these involve obviously the Labour Party, but a former neo-Nazi, Joshua Bonehill-Payne, selected as a Tory candidate for Somerset Council, defended by Kemi Badenoch as someone who's reformed and who's now working in counter-extremism. But he's, a long history of very, very, absolutely disgusting anti-Semitism, harassment, most foul, misogynistic, anti-Semitic and pornographic way of the now Baroness but former Labour MP Luciana Berger, but also, burglary and a police station and assault on a police officer convictions as well. I mean, he served time behind bars for the seriousness of his crimes. He claims he's reformed. Kemi Badenoch claims he's reformed. He is now resigned as councillor, but he's going to be kept on by the Conservative Party as an advisor on some of their counter-extremism roles. Do you think that Kemi Badenoch has made a misstep here?
I was with Luciana at the Old Bailey on the day she had to give evidence. And
when she was 6 months pregnant.
Yeah, I certainly saw the toll it took on her, but not only on that day, but on all the days leading up to that, and her staff too, who were with her on the day too. Horrific, long, drawn-out campaign of misogyny, hatred, pornographic images, endless, relentless social media. This is not a few hurty words or a misstep when you were 14. This is a long, drawn-out, ideologically driven hate campaign, plus all the criminal offences that you have just cited. Yeah. And the judge's verdict, it is worth having a look at what the judge said on the day, which is only a snapshot of what this guy got up to. So the question was about Kemi. Yeah. I can't believe, first of all, that she can't find a better person to be the Conservative candidate.
It does make me wonder, doesn't it? Yes.
And second of all, that her response to the outcry yesterday, including Luciana's statement, was to promote this guy. So he's not fit to be a council candidate, but he's okay to advise the leader of His Majesty's opposition.
But he wouldn't have a public-facing role, because certainly a lot of women, if you're women, you're Jewish, some of the stuff he's posted, you would not want to have any dealings with this man as your representative when you had a problem with your bin collections.
Well, she was so patronising about local councillors as well. Councillors have a really important democratic function. She said basically he's good enough to be a councillor, but not good enough to be an MP, which is just crazy. But I think there's two things. You have to distinguish, redemption and rehabilitation within the criminal justice system, which we have to believe is true. People can redeem themselves, but that's not the same as then promoting them into public office and to say they should then represent other people.
Although it would be up to the people of Somerset where they want to elect him. And I think it was a profound misstep on her part. Wonder whether she knew all the details
about her judgment. Her judgment is being called into question over this, because she doubled down on this guy. She went on the airwaves to defend him, and the rest of us that knew the backdrop to the story and looking at the case, also looking at his AI slop stuff that he does even today, you just think, what on earth are you thinking, Kemi? And is there no decent, upstanding Conservative Party member in that part of the world, without a long criminal conviction and prison sentence for misogyny and racism? You would think there might just somebody out there maybe a little bit better suited to be the Conservative candidate.
I think a lot of us.
That person.
I think a lot of us have thought that. Well, let's come back to something that does involve the Labour Party. A number of left-wing councils, including Labour, Green and Lib Dem authorities, have launched a coordinated effort to define by the new guidance, they're not new rules because the guidance has just come out. It's come into force yesterday. We talked about it on the show at great length. But this is basically about single-sex spaces, toilets, changing rooms, refuges and things like that. And basically, they've launched a coordinated effort to defy those rules. Some are refusing to make staff run services on the basis of biological sex. They said they would resist implementing the Equality and Human Rights Commission Code. So the leaders of 6 London boroughs, that's Lambeth, Hackney, Haringey, Lewisham, Southwark and Waltham Forest, made a joint commitment to keep their services, they say, inclusive, and warned that the rules will feel like an attack on transgender and non-binary residents. They wrote in a joint letter, trans women are women, trans men are men, and non-binary identities are fundamentally valid. And they say the code is harmful to the rights of trans people, and we won't put our staff in the impossible position of policing entry to public spaces. Should they be doing this?
No, absolutely not. And it's proof that the Green Party has lost the plot completely.
Labour are doing this too.
Well, some of the left of the Labour Party ought to know better, but the Green Party is now ideologically off the field in terms of British public opinion and the people of London. And the code is there for a good reason.
Hold on a minute. Your last Labour leader said that some women have penises. I've done a regular check, still haven't grown one. Your current Labour leader, Andy Burnham, has said within recent months that it's just not a big deal about who gets to use bathrooms and changing rooms, and it's not something that people should make a fuss about. An awful lot of women and girls feel rather differently about that.
Well, the Equalities Commission has put out its guidance, its code, and that's what the public bodies should adhere to.
And what should happen if they don't?
Well, then the full weight of the law should come down upon them, because that is what we have decided is the law, and that's why we have these watchdogs, to make sure everyone abides by it. And I think a lot of it, and I think was said yesterday, is performative. A lot of it's political rather than practical, and I'm not quite sure how far this will get. These threats of withdrawing staff and all of that, I think they're saber rattling. But I think most people just think, well, you've got to have these bodies that look after these areas of public policy, and abide by those once they've determined their view.
Should council staff who don't follow the law be sacked, and should councillors who urge them not to lose their roles and lose the whip?
Well, I don't know is the answer.
Why don't you know?
It would depend.
I know the answer to that.
It would depend on the circumstances.
No, it wouldn't.
Before I start calling for
if you urge people to break the law, you shouldn't be in public office.
I think it would depend on the manner in which that was done and the circumstances.
Why?
But my overall point is that they need to abide by the code.
So if they need to abide by the code and they don't, they'd be breaking the law and urging someone else to break the law. That should be. But you should lose your. If you're paid by the taxpayer and one of your jobs is to uphold the law and you refuse to do that, you encourage people to break the law. You should lose your job, shouldn't you? I don't understand what circumstances that would be acceptable in.
Well, I don't think it's very wise to have a sort of blanket view on it, but I mean,
blanket view on obeying the law. I have a horrible feeling, actually, Paul. The rest of us don't get to choose. There is a very blanket thing about the law, which is you have to obey it.
If a councillor was to say something which was encouraging others to break the law, then I think they would have sanctions against them.
They should lose the whip. Does the Labour Party want to have councillors who encourage people to break the law?
I think it would be
putting women and girls at risk, by the way.
I think it would. Well, I agree with that, and I think it would be a question for individual councillors and their whips to look at.
I would have thought it should be a question for the Labour Party leadership.
Well, overall, like I say, the code is there for all, and it should be abided by everybody, including Green councils.
Even though Andy Burnham doesn't actually think it's an issue.
Well, he obviously does think it's an issue,
doesn't he?
I mean,
that's what he sees.
I think. Well, why has this come out in the middle of the the summer now? It's happening.
No, he doesn't run the Equality and Human Rights Commission.
No, sure.
Paul, I think you're trying to skirt around the shilly-shally around the issue.
Not at all. No, absolutely not.
I'll leave that judgment to my audience. Paul Richards, former Labour Special Advisor, appreciate you joining us. Thank you. 11:50 is the time. Going to go straight to a break. Then we're going to be talking about Zach Polanski, the Green Party leader, who, for some reason, has been talking about, this is mind-blowing, climate change. I know. This is Talk.
What's this about you approving of Andy Burnham going on a holiday?
Yes, I do. I've written an article for the newspaper. I think you're wrong. I think Carl Turner's wrong.
Why?
Why? Because people need holidays and we want politicians
15 days? 15 days. What nonsense are you writing in the iPaper?
Do you want to take it?
What is he, an oil rig worker? 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off? You don't think he'll come to regret this holiday? Let me tell you, he will.
I'd rather take it now than in October, and I want our politicians to be like normal people taking a holiday in the summer, but we'll get into all of that.
That's absolute rubbish.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:52 is the time. Let's go straight to my next topic. And I was surprised by this because Zach Polanski, the Green Party leader, was on our telly screens yesterday. He was giving a press conference while I was on air, and I was absolutely flabbergasted. I mean, you'd have knocked me down with a feather yesterday to discover that he was talking about, not Gaza. No, for once, he was actually talking about climate change. The Green Party talking about an environmental issue. I know, so shocking. But he said that oil and gas companies should be taxed more to help fight Britain's wildfires. You might be interested to know that North Sea oil and gas companies already face a profits levy of 78%. But he said the UK needed a robust fire prevention strategy and fossil fuel firms should not be making a single penny of profit, and levies on excess profits should be increased to fund a better equipped fire service, including more firefighting helicopters. He's seen some pictures on the telly of wildfires and he's joined the dots. Let's talk about this with Rupert Darwell. He's author of Green Tyranny and joins us. Morning to you, Rupert.
Morning. Great to be joining you, Julia.
I mean, I would say I'm very excited the Green Party is talking about green issues. They haven't done that for quite a while. And interestingly, he wasn't talking about wildfires in Gaza, very unusually. And he wasn't blaming everything on Israel either. Again, all very unusual. But oil and gas companies should be taxed more to help fight Britain's wildfires. Can you explain, A, the link, and B, is that the solution?
Well, as you pointed out, North Sea oil companies are extremely heavily taxed, and as a result, BP announced just this week that they are selling their North Sea assets because they are underperforming thanks to the very heavy burden of taxes they already pay.
That said, they announced some huge profits, but they aren't being made on North Sea, are they?
Well, that's right. They're making profits because the price of oil is high at the moment. But oil prices are highly cyclical, and oil companies also, when the price is low, they don't make so much profit, and that is part of the cost of being in the oil and gas.
And during lockdown, of course, when no one was travelling and people weren't going out to work and things like that, and the production went down. They were not making these profits at all. It's the highs and lows of the market.
That's absolutely right, and that's what investors accept. But then if politicians come along and say, well, you're making too much money, but ignore the losses that you made earlier, or the sub-economic returns you were making, obviously that raises the cost of capital to particularly British oil and gas companies, which is why the old, what it used to be called British Petroleum, is now leaving the North Sea, where it's been since almost since the basin started producing.
And that should worry us. Now, it is the case that they can write off a lot of their investment, these oil companies in the North Sea, against profits, so they actually don't end up paying quite as much as it would appear on the face of it on the 78% profits levy. But at the end of the day, if we've gone to have more drilling in North Sea oil and gas, as apparently Andy Burnham does want to have, those companies need to be encouraged to do so. And funnily enough, they need to be motivated by profit. What I find fascinating is Polanski is obviously of the view that this is definitely a bad thing. They're definitely opposed to any new drilling or any drilling at all. And they say that money should be taken from these companies and should be they shouldn't make any profit at all, and they should be using it to fund the fighting wildfires. I'm not sure your helicopters fighting wildfires cost quite as much as he thinks they do, but of course we have seen wildfires lately. We've had a drought, we've had very high temperatures, land very dry. We've also seen change in farming and changes in how wild areas are kept and managed, which has meant there's a lot more dry kindling. We have seen these wildfires, but the reality is, on the official statistics, not something that I'm not compiling them. These are compiled independently by the officials. Wildfires, not just in Britain but across the world, across Europe, are actually going down, not up.
Yes, and there has been a downward trend, as you suggest. And the key thing is, if there is climate change, the best response is to adapt it, and not do as Nature England does and the RSPB does and the National Trust, which is allow dead vegetation to build up and essentially be fuel for the next wildfire. You need to clear it with controlled burns, which is what farmers and landowners have been doing for decades and decades.
And it's very good for the land.
And it's good for the land, and it works.
So we stopped doing that, and this has happened across Europe, across many countries. California, their wildfire problem as well, and they've stopped doing that, and therefore, when there is a fire, it's much bigger and much more, burns much longer, because there is so much effectively kindling there. But also, am I not right in thinking, actually, the vast majority of wildfires, Australia, California, the UK, when we see them on the TV, nearly always, and France as well, we've seen them around Bordeaux, that actually, and I know certainly in the south of France a few years ago, that actually often it turns out to have been either started by arsonists or, again, someone having a barbecue, so when they're not supposed to have a barbecue, more and more people are using this land and behaving irresponsibly. And what a surprise, we get wildfires.
Yeah, and so the answer is better land management, not thinking that rewilding and re-wetting, as we now look, is the answer to land management, but just being very sensible, creating fire breaks, planting trees that don't ignite easily, and so forth. And people know how to do this.
Yeah.
We know how to do this.
Why don't we do it then?
Well, it's environmentalism. It's about this return to nature. I think there's also, underneath it, there's this thing that, well, this is what we deserve, that if we allow climate change to happen, these things will happen. And it goes back way back to the birth of environmentalism with Thomas Malthus and his population, his essay on population, where he argued that the growing populations will be checked by pestilence, war, and famine.
Yeah, and of course it's completely and utterly wrong.
Yeah, and this is something, these are fates that in some sense we deserve because we have sinned against nature.
Yes, that's where you get in with the religious zealotry, which is not based on fact. Indeed. Rupert Dole, always good to talk to you, author of Green Tyranny. Very quick thought from Philip Ingram.
Well, there's an awful lot of talk about climate, and for once we're getting the Green Party talking about climate and green issues.
And they didn't mention Gaza once. Well done,
exactly. I think we should see this as a positive move by him.
Absolutely. I mean, he's wrong about everything, but it's good to hear him being wrong about green things rather than Gaza for a change. It's coming up to top of our hour. Next, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith. Plenty more besides your calls as well. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. It's 2 minutes past 12. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, watching on YouTube, or all the other formats, you can watch and listen. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget, you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. If you hit subscribe, you never have to miss a thing. I can stop yabbing on about you doing that, and you'll be able to go back and see a very enjoyable interview, which you just heard in the news there, with Professor Kehinde Andrews, and just defending Jason Arday, who apparently, has just done nothing wrong. Is just a victim of racism. And love to hear your thoughts on that. Lots of you getting in touch about Jason Arday. The professor has resigned from his job at Cambridge University as more and more scandals emerge about, well, whether his past and all his claims about his life and his academic scholarship are actually true or not. What does it tell us about the state of British universities, is my question to you. Give us a call on 0344 499 1000. Text us on 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged the national rate and text cost £1 standard network rate message. Delighted to say Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer, joins us still, and he can verify both of those claims. Genuinely, Philip, this is one of my things about the Jason Arday story, is just, OK, I mean, some of the things his CV are true.
Mm-hmm.
When I looked up, he's saying his family's been impacted by all of this, and he is married with kids. And again, if I were his wife, I'd be going, I'm just going to double check a few things that you've said to me. I would find it very difficult to trust anybody who lied about anything. I would say one of my many faults is invariable honesty. I'm too honest on many occasions. I'm also just really bad at lying. I'm just not very good at it. And
you don't play poker?
I don't know. I'm actually not a very good poker player either. This is the thing. But I just find it extraordinary that someone is sort of brave enough, brazen enough to do this. But do you in any way feel sorry for Jason Arday?
No. Not in the slightest.
Is he a victim of all of this, I'm saying?
No, something has caused him to get into this cycle. If all of this is proven that it is made up and everything else, because he's under investigation.
And lots of it will be true. Lots of it, the stuff he said, will
exactly.
True.
But something will have triggered it, and I feel sorry that he's got himself into this position where he feels he has to live in this this bubble of complete untruth. Now, I've come across an awful lot of people who do this and do it very, very convincingly indeed.
Well, I mean, if you're a spy, you often have to live a lie, don't you?
Well, but you have to know that you're living a lie, and that's the important piece. So that you have to then come back into reality and bring things out. So you're pretending you're like an actor. Whereas I know people who you really do genuinely believe a lot of the stuff that they are living in, and it's very difficult to find them out, and they live totally false lives and will impact others as they do it.
Well, indeed. Love to hear your thoughts on this. Get in touch. So say 0344 499 1000. Text on 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged the national rate. Text cost £1 standard network rate message. Let's talk about this and plenty of other stories right now. The former Conservative Party leader, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith MP. Good afternoon to you, Sir Ian.
Well, afternoon, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. I mean, this is an extraordinary story, the Professor Jason Arday resigning. I mean, within hours, the Cambridge University is saying they're actually looking into some of the claims of his academic positions and qualifications. This after plagiarism allegations that started going on for a number of years involving his PhD thesis. What do you make of this? Because we have had more than 15,000 people, the great and the good, signing a letter saying, for all intents and purposes, he's a victim of racism. People don't want a young black professor at Cambridge University. We had a guest on earlier, a black professor himself, Kehinde Andrews, saying this is about racism. Do you think that's what it is?
No, I don't, actually. And I think it's a very weak argument these days to claim that if somebody does something wrong, that when you try and talk about it or expose it or ask questions about it, you're being racist, because that's what it's all about. I thought that had all died. I thought all this stuff, we have actually so many people of colour in all sorts of important places in British life.
The leader of your party, for a start.
I know, not least of which is the leader of the Conservative Party. So I don't see why it should be suddenly, in his case, a defence to say this is racism. I don't believe it's racism. I think these are questions that have to be answered. I don't know whether any of them are true or false. I know what I've seen in the newspaper and the Telegraph investigations, and I understand that Jesus College is going to be carrying out an investigation, or maybe it's Cambridge, but one way or the other, we wait and see what we get to the bottom of. But he's resigned because obviously he's concerned about what's being said. But all I'd say is these things all sound a bit peculiar, and if they do sound a bit peculiar, the answer is you need to find out about them.
I mean, some of the claims
was he
about
appointed for a different reason
Yes.
rather than his academic credentials. So we just don't know. So the charge of racism goes in two directions, and I think we should take it out of this debate and simply ask the question, are these things that are being said about him correct or incorrect?
But the argument is that, you know, if he wasn't black, then people wouldn't be asking these questions and it wouldn't be a story. But the reality is the only reason anyone's heard of him is because they made it a story about him being the youngest black professor. So, you know, as you say, it goes in both directions. But there are question marks, aren't there, about, you know, top academic institutions. People, they're teaching students. This man has students he was teaching who've got, you know, getting into 50 grand's worth of debt to go to Cambridge University, would have done, you know, they've had to got A stars, you know, in their A levels, worked really hard to get there, being taught by someone whose question marks have been raised over his credentials. The people who invited him to do the job, who appointed him to do the job, surely they must have checked some of these things out. I would have thought there are quite a lot of things that are difficult to check out. Did you work as a waitress at this restaurant 20 years ago? But were you or were you not an honorary visiting professor at, you know, University of Ohio or whatever it was? That, it seemed to me, would be a really easy thing to check out.
Yes, so that's the question for them. If these things turn out to be correct, these charges, then why didn't the university carry out proper checks? Why didn't they do due diligence on someone's stated position and what they'd done? Because these are directly, I think the things that they're claiming are directly concerned with the nature of what the job would be, which is to be a professor at a university. As I say, I don't know a huge amount about it, and therefore I'm not able to say whether these are true or not. But the very question that they were never looked into does beg the question as to why the university was so determined to hire him and therefore not make the checks.
Let's also ask about whether your party leader, Kehinde Andrews, made suitable checks and did actually her due diligence when it came to choosing to back. I'm sure she wasn't involved in the selection of a Tory candidate for Somerset Council, but choosing to back Joshua Bonehill Payne when he was selected as a Tory candidate for Somerset Council, despite the outcry from the Board of Deputies, British Jews, other Jewish organisations, and indeed the victim of horrific misogynistic, anti-Semitic and pornographic harassment, Luciana Berger, former Labour MP, now a baroness, by a former neo-Nazi. Kehinde Andrews defended him, went all out and said, look, people, we believe in second chances in the Conservative Party. This man is now reformed. He's working counter-extremism for the Home Office and others, and he's a perfectly good candidate to be a councillor. He's now resigned, saying, you know, he understands, you know, concerns of people, and he's going. But Kehinde Andrews has doubled down and is pointing him to an advisory role on tackling extremism. Do you think she knew what she was doing when she got herself into this mess?
Well, yes, it's funny because there are two elements in all of this, which invariably one bit of it is always brushed aside. This individual was a vile human being who attacked and carried out this sort of neo-Nazi nonsense with others, and even at the time of sentencing was not exactly stepping back from
by
those
all counts, smirking in the dock.
Yeah. But during the course of that period, they have worked incredibly hard with him in the prison and got him to see that how stupid and mad are his previous ways, and he has come round. I understand that to be the case. The Home Office has claimed it, and others. So the question really was, I didn't know anything about this at all, to be honest with you, and I didn't know. He will have been selected as a candidate, and I'm sure Kemi wouldn't have known that at the time. But what she was doing, I believe, was trying to say, look, if somebody has changed their ways, and if somebody has set about trying to stop others doing what they did, then do they deserve a second chance to be able to demonstrate that their previous ways were wrong and that what they're now doing will hopefully end many others doing the same thing as they did. Now that's the question really. Does anybody that goes into prison, comes out after a sentence, should they be written off, or can you follow the process that says maybe they've changed their ways? And do we give them a second chance to be able to demonstrate that? I'm involved with a charity that gets ex-prisoners into work, because otherwise they drift back into criminality.
But
when they
here's
do,
the thing: second
all that sort of
chances
second
to
chance
someone
idea is what she was going on about.
Second chances to someone who's involved in drugs and did some burglaries. Second chance for someone who shoplifted. Second chances for someone who got involved in a pub fight when they're 18. I think a lot of people would believe in that, and absolutely. However, he's got a number of different convictions: violence against a police officer, the extreme harassment of Luciana Berger. She found very, very traumatic. Had to give evidence when she was pregnant. The organising anti-Jewification rally, Gold is Green, a strong Jewish area. It's all very well, but I mean, how much forgiveness and should there be? I mean, you think back. Remember Usman Khan, the 2019 London Bridge attack. He was at Fishmongers Hall as an ex-con, as an ex-Islamist, there on a counter-extremism, a conference, and then he started stabbing people, and then had to be killed by police officers on London Bridge. I can see, virtually see outside my office window, where it all happened. He was somebody who apparently was reformed. He changed, and he turned on the very people who'd worked to reform him. Can we really trust that someone who's an extremist, whether Islamist or far right, can ever fully change?
Well, that is a question that no one can answer except for the reality of whether or not they demonstrate that. And my answer is very simple. I wouldn't have appointed him because I would have felt straight away that you have to do a lot more work to be able to demonstrate your credentials after you leave prison than he had done. But that notwithstanding, I do understand why she was saying, Kemi was saying that, to all intents and purposes, from the Home Office and others, this man has been involving himself in cracking open other groups and helping them sort those people out who are misguided. Now, to that extent, you either reject that or accept it, and Kemi has made it clear that she thought that meant maybe they could have a second chance. And I don't say that is right or wrong. I simply say these things are not absolute, and we have
they're
to
not,
deal with
but
them as we see them.
It was an unnecessary battle to fight, was it not?
Well, we can certainly talk about in politics when you pick fights and when you don't pick fights. My personal view, though, is that during the summer, it's not a great time to be getting involved in these sort of things because, as you know, there isn't a huge amount of news quite often around.
Well, we've had plenty of news to be getting on with.
Today we have had
no,
a lot,
indeed.
so,
Let me ask you also, this morning we've had the latest figures on the government's anti-extremism scheme, Prevent. So we're talking about extremism. A record 10,000, well, almost 10,300 referrals were made to the Prevent scheme. That's in the year to September 2025, their latest figures. The year previously to September 24, there were 7,500. So it was up, basically, I'm rounding up, but it was up by 40%. Huge number of those referrals, I mean, extraordinarily. I mean, and we're looking at about 50% are under 18. Huge number of them 11 to 15-year-olds. Now, I mean, even children at primary school, 393 at primary school being referred. Is it a good thing that more people are being referred to Prevent? Is that actually doing any good? Because we know, someone very prominent in the news in recent years, actor Rudy Cabana, the Southport killer, he was referred to Prevent, and they just went, we're not quite sure what his extremism is, so we won't bother.
Well, I think it's both bad and good in a way. It's bad because it tells us the scale and extent of extremism now, much of it Islamic extremism, in various locations. And it also tells us, however, that they are at least spotting these individuals. So the question really is, are they getting on top of it? And are these people that they're dealing with going to be okay to let back into the community? That's the single biggest question that we have. Too often, it seems that the tendency has been to say yes, but quite often they turn out to be wrong. And as you're saying, the Southport killer was exactly a case of that. To that extent, you have to ask whether people who are doing this Prevent training and everything else actually understand what the risks are when somebody is clearly showing that they are naturally a violent individual with violent views who would like to do violent things to others. Then you have to be very careful about what you choose to do with them thereafter. And at what extent how do you test that their views are in fact change and that they are going to become proper citizens rather than anything else. But it does ask the other question, why have we been letting in so many people who are bringing in vile, foul beliefs, whose whole purpose in life is to have one religion take over all else and destroy it? I mean, these people shouldn't be coming in the first place, and if they're there...
Do you know what? You sound a little bit like Rupert. You sound a little bit like Rupert Lowe of Restore just then.
I don't think we went that far, did we? No, I've always taken the view, very simply, we have to stop people coming in who it is established have vile views because they influence others. And
it's a radical view, but I think it's one the British public would agree with.
Well, I hope so.
Can I ask you just one final question? We asked the Labour representative about this earlier, but Labour, Green and Lib Dem authorities, 6 London boroughs, Lambeth, Hackney, Haringey, Lewisham, Southwark and Waltham Forest, I would say usual suspects at this point, have made a joint commitment to keep their services inclusive, they say, when it comes to single-sex spaces, bathrooms, changing rooms and the like. And they're refusing to make staff run services on the basis of biological sex along the lines of what has been the law always, reaffirmed as the law in April last year by the Supreme Court, but new guidance from out in June, now come into force as of yesterday from the Equality and Human Rights Commission, making it very clear about what has to be provided and for whom, and the basis of single-sex spaces being based on biological sex, not what someone thinks they are on a Wednesday afternoon. They're basically saying they're not going to obey the law. They say this is an attack on trans and non-binary people. What should happen to a councillor and or a council official who doesn't enforce the law?
Well, I think they're going to have to, because they are, in fact, defying a law. This is not a general suggestion or a bit of persuasion. This is a law. It is now law, quite capital, always has been, but it's re-emphasised by the Supreme Court, that the test for men and women's showers, lavatories, etc., sex spaces on biological sex. Yeah. And therefore you cannot have people going into a women's space, which is for women only, who is not a biological woman. That is clear in the law. And I'm sad to see that my own council, Waltham Forest, is part of this. So first I'd heard that they were involved in it.
You might want to have words.
Sorry?
You might want to have words.
They're already forming in my mind. But I have to say to you that they have to do what the law says. They may not like it, they may complain about it, but they have to do what the law says. And how many women have been sort of threatened and bullied by various organisations because all they've done is ask that when they go into the changing rooms to get changed, to have a shower or to do something which is a safe space, it is no longer safe by a biological male entering those areas, and that feels threatening to them, and it is threatening, which is why women have separate spaces to men. Because they are more likely to be threatened by men, and therefore they should be excluded from those safe spaces.
It's really that simple, isn't it? Do explain that to Waltham Forest Council and do get back to us and tell us how it goes. Sorry, Ian Douglas-Smith, MP, former Conservative Party leader. Great to have you on the show as always. Thank you so much. Philip Ingram, just on that particular topic, I don't think we've had your thoughts on this, but it is extraordinary, these councils, and we've seen this again and again. I think Lambeth has been one of the worst, run by the Greens. Good luck to the people of Lambeth with that, but you elected them, tough, But it's just extraordinary. Like, well, we're just not going to obey the law. No, sorry, you don't get to choose.
I always thought that incitement to break the law in itself is a criminal offence, and therefore,
especially if you're in public office,
those individuals in public office who do that should then be arrested and prosecuted. They certainly should lose the whip, and they certainly should be thrown off the council. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. It's black or white. The law is the law.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, it always was. Yes. But there we are. 12:20 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to get to your calls. Lots of you still getting in touch about the Jason Arday case, the scandal, I think it is. What does it tell us about the state of British universities? 0344 499 1000, especially when a fellow black academic is saying that, well, and indeed 15,000 are the great of the good, very much the great of the good. They throw wonderful dinner parties, and they definitely go to interpretive dance recitals quite a lot on a Saturday afternoon, I'm sure. But they all think that basically this is just down to racism, and even asking questions of Jason Arday about his past and things that just simply don't add up and aren't verifiable. It's just blatant racism. Is that what it is? Give us a call. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Do Reform, however, have a plan to build more prisons?
Yeah, 100%. So we will have overseas prisons. We will deport all foreign prisoners to their point of origin. You know, like Labour has done with some, by the way. Do you remember one of them one of an illegal migrant from Ethiopia? They sent him back straight away.
Yeah.
You know, there was no returns agreement, or they had no problem with that.
Why can't that just happen?
Why can't that just happen now? So that's one thing we do. So we should free up about 12,000 spaces just doing that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back. 12:23 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. Not surprisingly, I think pretty much all the calls on the board are about Professor Jason Arde. He has resigned from Cambridge University after, well, various things that he's claimed about his academic positions and scholarship and pretty much everything in his personal life seemed to, well, let's just say, not much evidence for. Let's just go with that. But what does it tell us about the state of British universities and indeed all those who are claiming that actually it wasn't his appointment that was based on his race, it is his harassment out of his job, apparently. Number to call is 0344 499 1000. Michael in Birmingham has done just that. Michael, what do you want to say?
Yeah, it's not so much about Arde himself, but what he is, he's the poster boy for the tip of the iceberg for the DEI problem. Yeah. And I have seen it in practice, in my experience in the public sector going back many, many years. I've seen the likes of this guy, right, where they've clearly been appointed, that they haven't been checked properly. They're getting positions paying hundreds of pounds a day. I've caught people on that who are downloading basic tutorials and boning up on the job. And you know, what's worrying about this? I mean, one time somebody even asked to borrow a piece of my work to see what I did, and I put in the middle of it, "Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle." And when they presented that to the committee, they left that sentence.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah,
you know. So that and that is because it's a lack of diligence. They're trying to do the right thing. Let's be kind. They're trying to do the right thing, but they're doing the wrong thing. Julia, these people could be the engineers misdesigning bridges. They could be the doctors.
This is the thing.
Doing the wrong
and
thing.
This is happening. I doubt it's happening just for, you know, was it the sociology of education professorship? What about people, you say engineers, doctors? And we've had another case this week, you know, of a doctor who's getting qualifications just completely made up. This is, by the way, this is from Reuters from some years ago, that 1 in 4 of the doctors working in India don't have a medical degree. They claim to have a medical degree. They've not done the training. They've not passed the exam. But they are working as doctors. And a huge number of people come over here. But they've got a piece of paper, but you know, does anyone check whether they've actually got a real medical degree? And okay, I'm not in any way casting aspersions on a particular group of people working from abroad. We don't know, and very few checks are made.
Yeah, I've been in meetings where people cannot speak the English language and they're being stated as experts, whatever. And I think, I know they're not. I know the field they're in.
Yeah.
I know they're not. I know that.
Do you mind me asking what your field is, if I wouldn't give away?
Yeah, it's in project management, mainly in IT, and I've worked in the private and the public sector about it. And
I imagine that's the sort of subject you can't bluff too much, because you know, I think you could bluff my job. I don't think you could bluff running an IT project.
They're not might necessarily be running it. They might be a component of it, and they're still getting paid big money.
Yeah.
And you would be surprised. You know, you could be a risk manager appointed for that who knows nothing about risk apart from what you've downloaded from Wikipedia.
Right, yeah. That's the thing. You're worried that this is not, this, again, it doesn't really matter so much to most of us if it's happening in a professorship in Cambridge, but if it's happening across the board, and we know it is, that's the key thing. Thank you, Michael. Great call. Really appreciate that. Andrew is in Hertfordshire. Hello, Andrew. How are you?
Really good, Top Girl. Philip's on one this morning. He really does need some chamomile tea, I think.
He gets very upset when I talk about football. Anyway, what do you want to say about the Jason Arde case?
Look, let's not judge him by the colour of his skin. Let's judge him by his actual skills and ability. It's irrelevant, the colour of his skin.
Completely.
He hasn't got the skills to do the job. It's not his fault. They set him up to fail.
Now, this is it.
So
no,
sad.
A lot of people are saying this. It's where it's the system, and you know, and he's just like a cog in this world. But at the end of the day, I write my CV when someone puts something. If I still speak at a conference or I'm presenting an event, and they ask me for my CV, or they'll say, "This is what we're going to say about you. Is that accurate and up to date?" I don't believe anything that has been said about him on a university website is put there without his say so. He's not a victim.
No, you're right. You position that better than I have. I agree. What he's done is wrong, but somebody should have just set him down and gone through this, because it's so ridiculous. It makes everyone, Cambridge, him, the BBC, the Guardian, Channel 4, just makes them look like fools.
I mean, they really do.
It's so sad. It's almost like a Nigerian scam in the 80s in relation to transferring money.
Yeah.
It's just, everyone can see through it. And I don't feel pity for him. He actually, this is so sad. Why set him up like that? Why not find there's a lot of good people out there who happen to be black who are bright.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, on one level, you can say he's very, very clever because he's got through this. And bearing in mind, in his resignation letter, he doesn't in any way admit that there is any issue and any truth in any of the allegations against him.
The marathon one is beyond comical.
Yeah. In fact, 30 marathons in 35 days, raising £5.5 million for charity aid total. I mean, these things, you'd think there'd be at least one picture of him with a big cheque. Just one.
Yes, you would. And it is so sad that Cambridge hung themselves 100% on this bloke without doing a thing called, and Philip might understand this word, due diligence.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed. Philip, again, do you want to come back?
He's 100% right. I think the big loser out of all of this is Cambridge University, because it's going to call into credibility the academic prowess of every single one of their professors.
Well, this is it. I mean, you sort of think maybe they want to all on their websites publish all their credentials. No, here they are. But again, most of us will understand, when we've applied for jobs, that people check references. I mean, a lot of time over a certain number of years, people go, well, I know, did I work at LBC? Did I work at Talk? Well, yeah, I mean, I've seen, do you have a column in the Sun? Yes, I can see it. It's there. There's public evidence. You don't need to, why do I need to provide proof of that? You can see it with your own eyes.
There's my book.
Yeah, here's a copy of my book. But again, I find it extraordinary that the abject lack of due diligence, but I imagine it's across the board. And we see again and again and again in the public sector, again, people not doing their job. Now, if a private company wants to hire somebody who can't do their job, more for them. But the public sector have a duty of care to us to make sure that people's credentials are true. And people claiming things that they can't do, which are relevant to the job, is very scary.
But I think there's even more to this for Cambridge University and our other universities, because they're not just public bodies. They are private companies. They rely on a lot of private industry, they rely on a lot of public funding, but they rely on a lot of private research and that coming in. And this is going to raise question marks over the credibility of those that are actually handling that money for research or for anything
Do we
else.
need more investigation into the sociology of education? That's
Yes.
I would absolutely. I would say the kind that this man was carrying out. I'm going to guess probably not. I've read a little bit of some of the things that he's read. He's written. I've got to be honest with you. She said, having fluffed that, virtually incomprehensible, gobbledygook nonsense.
But isn't that what university professors are all like? You're sitting there in class going, "That's incomprehensible gobbledygook nonsense. It must be good."
It must be good. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of bluffing going on. 12:31 is the time. Going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be talking to our good friend of the show, Andrew Fox. We're going to be talking about Ed Miliband being off in the United States. He's back now. I mean, they could have kept him longer after talking to the Secretary of State there, and whether or not Keir Starmer misled MPs over defence spending promises. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:33 is the time. Philip Ingram is still with me. Delighted to be joined right now by Andrew Falk, Senior Associate Fellow at the Henry Jackson Society. A very, very good morning, afternoon to you, sorry.
Hi, Julia. Great to see you.
Haven't spoken to you for a little bit. Great to have you on the show. I wonder what you make of Marco Rubio urging Ed Miliband, our Foreign Secretary, still sounds bizarre, but apparently that is his job, to increase UK defence spending. This was their meeting in Washington, D.C. yesterday, where, of course, we had lots of journalists asking them, as they were doing a rather sort of like cringy handshake for a rather long time, asking whether he still thought that Donald Trump was a misogynist and a racist and et cetera, et cetera. But, I mean, the crucial stuff there was about, you know, defence and defence of our realm and of the West. What do you make of the US basically saying, yeah, you're not spending enough?
Well, I think we've been around this boy 1,000 times under multiple successive governments and multiple successive defence secretaries. It's very much the case that we are in an era where our armed forces are on their bare bones. Multiple cuts under the coalition with David Cameron and the Lib Dems stripped us to the bone. Lots of sleight of hand with incorporating nuclear budgets and pensions within defence, where they were never considered that before. So it's nothing new here. But we just had the dip. We know that John Healey cared about the underfunding enough to resign as Defence Secretary over it. He's now the man with his hand on the purse strings. So now he's Chancellor. Does he still care enough about defence funding to make it a resignation issue or not? And it's going to be an interesting few weeks when Parliament reconvenes.
Well, it is interesting also that it's emerged in the last few days that John Healey, as Chancellor, I mean, a lot of us thought he must have done a deal when he took that job. It was that we thought, a lot of people thought that was a bit of a clever appointment by Andy Burnham, someone who was, you know, great credibility, not seen as any particular side of the party, not somebody who would upset people, which Ed Miliband or Shabana Mahmood would. And there was an assumption that because he'd resigned over the failure to give enough money to defence, and he'd said in his resignation letter it needed to hit 33% by 2030, that he had basically agreed that pledge from the new Prime Minister Andy Burnham, but apparently he has not.
Well, there's huge holes in this budget. We know they have to find 4.7 billion. We know they have to find a further 10 million in sort of smoke and mirrors. Sorry, billion, in smoke and mirrors from inside defence itself. It just doesn't give you the sense of them taking this risk seriously. And look, we just have to look at Ukraine in the last few days as to what happens if you don't prepare for war in the right way. You know, all of Russia's ballistic missiles are currently getting through because Ukraine doesn't have enough missile defences. We look at the Gulf. Iranian missiles are getting through because they don't have enough missile defences. America has run out of ammunition almost.
And apparently will take 3 years to rebuild it. I mean,
possibly longer.
What if China decides to go for Taiwan, but in that 3-year period, which would seem very likely?
Well, on top of that, China controls 90% of the world's rare earth minerals that are needed to recreate these missile stocks. So China not only will see an opportunity, but also has the ability to throttle the rearming. So that's an interesting problem as well. But look, we aren't ready. You know, we're not ready for drones. We're not ready for ballistic missiles. The threat is clear and obvious. And our politicians need to take things seriously and stop making TikToks about pork scratchings and get our defences where they need to be before it's too late.
Everyone talks the talk on this one. I mean, we hear it again and again and again, including, you know, Keir Starmer did, Andy Burnham did. We'll come to sort of something about Keir Starmer in that respect in just a moment. But no one seems to actually deliver, because again, defence, it's not one of the... I would like most government spending on stuff that really matters. You know, you can talk the talk on it, but if you don't walk the walk, people will die. Our country is going to be at risk. It is really, really that simple. And it seems to me that they sort of go, how much money have we got left for defence, as opposed to the other way around, which is, what is the threat? What do we need to counter the threat? And finding that money. It is the first job of government to defend the realm. A lot of the politicians who talk about this stuff don't really seem to believe the threat is as real, as dangerous and as imminent as it actually is. What do we need to do to persuade them that they can then persuade the taxpayers? Look, you know, I know you want tax cuts, I know you want more spend on this or on that. We haven't got the money and we need to spend a shed load more, billions and billions more on defence to keep us safe. What do we need to do to, frankly, get this through their thick skulls? Because I think we are in very, very dangerous territory.
We are. And look, you can see, Ed Miliband went to Washington and spoke about the need to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Like, fantastic and laser sharp geopolitical insight there from Miliband. But the bigger thing here is that we don't have any ability to really influence this at all.
Yeah.
So even if there was a ceasefire in the Gulf tomorrow, we wouldn't have the ability to help reopen the Strait of Hormuz, make sure that British people aren't paying extortionate prices at the petrol pump and at the supermarket, which have a direct line to what's happening at the moment. So defence, because we are lacking in it, you are paying more at the petrol pump.
Yeah.
Anyone listening to this, the reason you're paying 85 quid to fill up your car
and the rest
is because I don't know what you drive, Julia, but it's 85.
Oh no, a pretty basic. I mean, BMW Tiguan, I think it was about 110 quid last time.
Amazing. But yeah, that's because we don't have strong defences. So making that direct sales pitch to people saying, look, we can't influence world events that have a direct effect on your pocket unless we have strong defences. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is we're parked away on the western edge of Europe. Missiles look a very long way away. The Middle East looks a very long way away. Ukraine looks a very long way away. It only takes a Russian container ship to pull up just off Portsmouth, launch a fleet of drones and start attacking our critical infrastructure. Yeah. Look at Lydd. There is a nuclear power station right next to a military base down on the south coast of Lydd. It wouldn't take much to land some pretty big strikes on that if an enemy wanted to do that. There are vulnerabilities all over the place here.
Again, if it's a big, we talk about if, so doing a lot of heavy lifting in that. Well, I suppose the view of most politicians and most voters would be, yeah, if they do, but they don't want to do it. Why would Russia want to launch an attack on us?
Well, we are consistently painted as Russia's number one enemy in Russian media. In many ways, we live rent-free inside their heads. We've been probably the strongest backer of Ukraine at this point.
Yeah.
We have been absolutely steadfast in supporting them in their battle against Russia, and Russia, as a result, quite rightly in some senses, sees us as their enemy because we have opposed their brutal and vicious attack into Ukraine. So it's quite right that we should be an antagonist to them, which unfortunately does also put us in their sights. Now, you might say, fine, let's just stop supporting Ukraine. Okay, but that means you're not supporting a democratic ally in the face of a vicious authoritarian assault. And is that a country we want to be? Well, I would firmly argue not.
Indeed. Let me just bring you also to Keir Starmer. I like to think we'd never have to talk about him again, but he has come up in a report by the UK Statistics Watchdog yesterday. They said Keir Starmer misled MPs over defence spending. Back in March, he told a committee that the government would spend £270 billion more on defence than we would otherwise have done, following an uplift in spending last year. However, the UK Statistics Authority said the £270 billion figure was the total planned spending on the military over the course of this Parliament, rather than an increase. And it said that Keir Starmer's statement was incorrect and misleading. I remember picking up on that at the time, thinking, that's not true. There are lots of numbers that are thrown around, and these numbers sound huge, don't they? But the numbers are nearly always based on what we'll spend over 3 years or over 5 years, and it's the total amount, not the uplift, ignoring, the actually incredibly small increases we're seeing in real terms in the spending.
Well, I think we can afford to potentially be generous to Starmer here. He's clearly not all over that. Yeah, he's not all over that brief, and he clearly never was.
Yeah.
Defence is never a priority for Labour, and nothing has changed there. But I think this is part of the problem as well, is that the numbers we talk about in defence are so astronomical.
Yeah.
I can't envisage what £270 billion looks like. I can't imagine what I could buy with that if it was in my bank account. It's too big to visualise, really. So what's the difference between 350 billion and 270 billion, where these numbers are so enormous? And I think that's another information and messaging challenge, is to articulate what the defence of the realm actually looks like. What does this money buy our taxpayers for their money? Yeah. And I think both the MOD, the Army, Navy, Air Force have all done a fairly poor job of explaining that in the past, why we need it, why we need defences, what we're going to buy with the money and what we're going to use it for. And until somebody stands up and makes that case really clearly, simply in language people can understand, these numbers are just going to remain fantasy economics, and nobody's going to really get engaged in the way they need to.
Yeah. Just finally, I want to ask you about Iran. We're constantly told there might be a deal. There's going to be a big attack by the US on Iran, then it's going to be called off. There's going to be talks. Are there talks? Aren't there talks? Will they reopen the Strait of Hormuz, as you suggested? Likely, we see, certainly not ruling out the prospect of tolls being paid to Iran and Oman on the other side of the channel. What likelihood do you think that is going to happen any day soon, and that will have the single biggest impact on our cost of living?
It will, and I'm not going to get my crystal ball out on this one for the simple reason that everything changes in the Middle East every 30 minutes at the moment. But we know that Iran and Oman have come to some sort of agreement. They're trailing that quite hard. Trump is still talking about nuclear material. He's living in this fantasy land where he hasn't lost this war and he has any say in what Iran do going forward. Notwithstanding the fact he's out of missiles and the Gulf states are running desperately low on missile defences against Iran, who've proven themselves to be a rocket, drone and missile superpower in the Middle East. So unfortunately, the end state of this war looks very much like Hormuz reopening, but with Iran taking a chunk of the cash out of it. American deterrence is shattered. The Gulf state defences are in a poor state, and Iran comes out of this looking stronger than ever, in spite of the attrition they've taken at the tactical level. But as we know, tactics without strategy is simply the noise before defeat, to quote Sun Tzu. And that's where we are right now.
Very good point there. Lovely to talk to you as always, although a little bit depressing today, to be fair. Andrew Fox, Senior Associate Fellow at the Henry Jack Society, thank you for that. Philip Ingram, listening to all of that, nodding along to an awful lot of it. I know you know Andrew Fox well. In terms of his sort of analysis of defence spending, what we need to spend, how big the threats are to us, what do you make of that?
He's 100% right in what he said. And the other thing we don't articulate to the country properly is are the benefits that spending more on defence will bring on a day-to-day basis.
There are economic benefits and jobs.
Economic benefits, jobs, but also then from a longer-term perspective, the innovations that come out of that people rely on. And one thing I do disagree with Andrew on is, with Keir Starmer having misled Parliament, he says he wasn't around his brief. He's the Prime Minister, or he was the Prime Minister. He needs to be on his brief. And therefore, having misled Parliament to that degree, he should be held in contempt of Parliament.
And no one picked him up on it. Yeah. And again, I think he did repeat that statement as well.
Yeah. You need accountability. Yeah. We need to hold our senior leaders accountable.
And I don't think it was a misspeak. I don't think, But it's interesting, Andy Burnham, everyone says that he's just not that interested in foreign affairs. And again, it's like every American president gets elected as being an isolationist. No one's got America. We're going to have more wars in the Middle East. They don't do that. Everyone wants to be an isolationist. They just often don't have, one of the worst in terms of foreign affairs presidents you've had in recent years was Obama, not wanting to get involved in Syria. Well, how did that work out, everybody? But this is the thing, is that Andy Burnham saying, I'm not that interested, I'm basically going to outsource it to Ed Miliband. Well, A, I don't trust Ed Miliband's judgment on anything, even including eating a bacon sandwich. But B, I'm sorry, but you don't have a choice, because when you're saying the biggest issue for people in Britain right now is cost of living, well, that's as a result of a foreign policy failure in the Middle East by all of Europe and the West.
Our Prime Minister's role is to look across the board and up and out and select his team to run everything internally. Andy Burnham's biggest priority should be our international standing and looking at that, so it sets the conditions around the globe that the UK can operate safely in, and he's got a team to run what's going on in the country, and he gives that clear direction. If he's not doing that, he's getting his job wrong.
I don't think he's ever commented on this stuff. I don't think he's ever thought about this stuff.
He wants to be Mayor of England. He doesn't want to be Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
That's the worry, isn't it? Well, you get to go on holiday then, don't you?
Yeah.
Where are you, by the way, this clash? And we've been playing it in the breaks as well, and it's out on social media. Did you have a look? Kevin O'Sullivan and Peter Cardwell yesterday, their handover their show 7 o'clock. And Peter Cardwell has written a piece for the Eye newspaper defending Andy Burnham going off on his holes 2 weeks into the job. Kevin, very unhappy about it. Where do you stand on this?
I think it's right and appropriate that he takes a holiday, but I think he should have known that taking it 2 weeks into the job was not going to look good whatsoever.
He's going to have to do it in the school holidays because he's got kids.
Well, yes, but some of us don't get the chance to take holidays because you're busy in jobs and other things.
We had a caller who was military yesterday, and he was saying, "Look, sorry, I missed Christmas. People, because you get sent off."
When I was in a planning job in 3 years, 2.5 years, I had managed to get 5 days holiday in that period of time. I was working 6.5 days a week, over that whole period of time as we got ready for operations and then deployed in operations.
There are certain jobs you don't. Well, it's like people that got wanting to go and work in the emergency services. Yeah, I'm afraid you are going to have to work Christmas. I worked Christmas Day before because I was a journalist. And I worked on a Sunday paper, and we had an edition to get out.
Great Andy Burnham had booked his holiday beforehand, and then his circumstances changed. I'm now Prime Minister.
But he knew for quite a long time. He wasn't like a sudden thing. He's known for a long time.
He should be here making sure that what he's doing is he's getting his plans right, his policy right for Parliament coming back in September, so he can get everything right there instead of going on a holiday which he can then postpone to next year and say, look, I've worked really hard this year and do that. Does that mean a little bit of pain for him and his family? Yes. Is it right and justified that he does that? Ideally, no, but he's in that role now where he has to take the bigger picture.
Exactly. Very interesting. Well, there you are. Kevin, I think he's on your side, not Peter's. 12:47 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Up next, going to be talking about the Turkish barber tip line. Reform UK have announced this morning, so Yousaf, they introduced basically a tip line to report migrants working illegally in Britain, and very stiff penalties for those who employ them. That's up next. This is Talk.
What's this about you approving of Andy Burnham going on a holiday?
Yes, I do. I've written an article for the newspaper. I think you're wrong. I think Carl Turner's wrong.
Why?
Why? Because people need holidays and we want politicians
15 days? 15 days. What nonsense are you writing in the eye?
Do you want to take it?
What is he, an oil rig worker? 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off? You don't think he'll come to regret this holiday? Let me tell you, he will.
I'd rather take it now than in October, and I want our politicians to be like normal people taking a holiday in the summer, but we'll get into all of that.
That's absolute rubbish.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Afternoon. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 12:50 is the time. Let's talk right now about my pledge made from Reform UK, Zia Yousaf specifically, the Home Affairs spokesman, to introduce a new, what they call a Turkish barber tip line to report illegal migrants working in Britain. Under the plans, police and trading standards would be required to follow up on credible tips, and those whose reports lead to successful prosecution of employers employing illegal workers would be rewarded with a share of the fines generated. That's quite an incentive, isn't it? The party has pledged to send bosses of firms to jail if they employ illegal migrants and fine companies 10% of their global revenues if they employ migrants illegally. Now, it wouldn't be global revenues, would it? If it's just your local garage and doing some car washing or nail bar. But what about those big delivery companies, the Uber Eats, the Deliveroos, have been exposed, front page of The Sun, not long ago, as basically people being able to subcontract as their delivery drivers. Well, let's talk about all of this with Tom Jones. Not that one. Tom Jones, Deputy Online Editor at The Critic. A very good afternoon to you, Tom.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for joining us. I have to say, it sounds like a jolly good idea, all of this, because we've had even the BBC in the last few months have got excited about, it turns out there are an awful lot of business on our high streets who are employing people illegally and getting up to no good, and nothing's happening and no one's doing anything about it. The end of the day is every employer is required by law to check that the person they employ is legally allowed to work. Everyone has to do it. Anyone who doesn't do it should absolutely face the consequences. And one thing that would really focus the mind would be being sent to prison yourself. Isn't this the way to deal with this problem?
Yeah, I think absolutely. You know, to quote Charlie Munger, never talk about anything else when you can talk about incentives. And this is a huge incentive for this. I think it's really depressing, actually. If you go down most high streets in Britain, the only businesses that are really thriving are the ones that exist in some way to get around our laws.
Turkish barbers, vape shops,
Hand car washes is another great example. Deliveroo. I remember the Home Office a while ago responded to an FOI by Reuters.
Freedom of information request, yeah.
Yeah. 42% of the riders on a single stop program they rolled out were employed illegally. So,
but there's no penalty. There never seems to be any penalty for the people who are doing this.
No, absolutely not. I think there were more than 9,000 migrants arrested working illegally last year. We have a grey labour market that is employing far, far, far more of that. I think there is a secondary issue here, which is in part is the lack and the problems around trading standards.
Yeah.
There are really too few trading standards officers in this country. It's something that councils can cut back on.
Yeah.
And there are quite significant reports of those existing trading officers actually being subject to threats of physical violence from some of these businesses. Again,
well, they're involved with organised crime, a lot of them.
Exactly. And that is, in the case of Deliveroo, a lot of those riders are working in order to pay back debts to the smuggling gangs. In other cases, the vape shops, the Turkish barbers, it's more likely to be a front for organised crime. And we know this problem exists. As you say, even the BBC is opening up to it.
Even they have found it. But this is the thing, it's happening very big. Now, I talked about, earlier on the latest car wash I went to. I told a story before about a friend of mine who's with his wife walking along a local high street near me, which is a fairly dodgy high street, and she said, oh, this is a nut shop. Let's go and buy some nuts. The nut shop, my friend pointed out, had security people outside and clearly had sort of armoured doors, the front and back. But she went in and said, hello, can I buy these? And the man on the till went, what did you pay last time? Because, of course, they never sell any nuts. It's obviously a drug dealing business. But, and a week later, that business had disappeared. Maybe it had been raided. Who knows what happened? But a lot of this stuff, it's happening in plain sight. And it is very, very, very easy and very, very simple to just go around and check. Some of these questionable shops. Hello, let's see your books. Let's see the proof that your workers are here legally and can prove themselves. And if they can't, you are liable. And taking profits, threatening international profits, I mean, good luck with getting that money, but it will certainly focus minds. But as we know, in all of these scenarios, it is the prospect of the person who's made the decision to hire someone possibly going to prison. That is the real focus, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think one of the things that would be interesting to see reform adopt is in America, they've done very, very well with intergovernmental teams. So getting people from the DEA, which is the Drugs Enforcement Agency, alongside basically anti-organised crime, FBI, and rolling those out into teams to kind of roll out organised crime networks in cities. That might mean that we need some kind of anti gang crime law like the RICO laws in America. But I think this is a really good start for reform, actually, and I think we should probably commend it.
Well, it's going to be immensely. People say, oh, it's unworkable. We haven't got the prison spaces. And people say, well, there'll be, rival businesses might report a company. But again, if you report a company for having illegal workers, they do have illegal workers, you'll share the profits. Why not report them? That's a good thing. But again, bearing in mind, illegal workers are rarely being paid the legal minimum wage or above. They're largely being paid cash in hand, no taxes being paid. They're using that to rent homes. They're bringing down local wages for legitimate people. They're bringing down profits for legitimate businesses, and they're bringing up rents in local homes. There is an impact on everybody else.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think we will be surprised at the scale of illegal working in a lot of these places.
I won't be.
You mentioned,
you
mentioned hand car washes earlier. I think 90%, more than 90% of hand car washers are likely either to be employing people illegally or without proper pay or without records.
But then why don't trading standards, it's easy, why don't the police and the trading standards just turn up there on a Saturday morning?
Yeah, again, I think to some extent this is a problem really with enforcement.
Yeah.
But of course, if we have a greater supply of maybe other rival hand car washers handing each other in, that's a virtuous circle as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. Tom Jones from The Critic, thank you very much indeed. Philip Ingram listening to all of this. Again, none of this stuff's beyond the wit of man. You don't even need new laws. I mean, in fact, desperately making it personal. But but people should be accountable. If you're hiring illegal migrants, I'm sorry, you should go to prison.
100%. But this idea of getting more eyes on the ground to report it, I think, is a good thing. But the one thing I will say is that the UK is very good at working from a multi-agency perspective at the moment. So the National Crime Agency, different police forces do bring in agencies from other areas and work together much better than you see in lots of other countries around the world.
That's interesting.
Doesn't mean that it can't be improved even more, but we are.
But you just need to turn up. And again, the fact that this stuff is happening in plain sight.
Yeah.
That's the bit I think a lot of us find frustrating. And again, there is an impact. It affects legitimate businesses.
Oh, very much so.
That's the reality.
And it affects communities and everything else because it's run by organised crime. It's brought in. That means there's more organised crime in the area.
Trafficking
and then
people,
you get the people trafficking, you get the drugs, you get the sex trafficking, you get everything else that comes with it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Really appreciate you joining us today, Philip Ingram. Really great to have had your company, your input on everything. Delighted to say right now, Mark Dolan is here. Morning to you, afternoon to you, sorry.
Well, it's so good to see you. The political right in this country...
Who, him or me?
Well, both of you. But I mean,
He's closer.
I would be so happily put you into in charge. But the political right of fighting like rats in a sack, how does that help Britain? Because what we actually need is some conservative policies. And yet you've got Rupert versus Nigel versus Kemi. Now Reform are woke, apparently. Make it make sense.
That was a weird thing, wasn't it?
Kemi's going through a strange phase. Granting the right of an ex-neo-Nazi to run as a Tory councillor.
Again, we were saying yesterday, a good decision that he's decided to stand down.
Sure.
But I don't think this was a hill to die on. I think it's a really weird thing.
Where is Kemi's head at is the big thing. So we're
going to talk about Jason Arday as well, because
of course we are.
Just,
and it's a bright